right, welcome everybody to Standing for Truth. My name is Donnie Badinsky, and I am your host and moderator for tonight's debate showdown on the topic of soul sleep. This is a debate between Adam from Curious Christianity and Tom from Praise I Am. And I'm excited for this, gentlemen. I am thrilled to not only have you guys back here for a debate, but a debate on soul sleep, an important topic that really isn't debated enough. And so I'm looking forward to a thought-provoking, a comprehensive, and engaging debate, I'm sure. Now, the resolution, though, to be specific, is this. Believers do not go to heaven when they die. Adam takes the affirmative and Praise takes the negative. And let's get acquainted. Let's break the ice a little bit before you gentlemen bring the heat tonight. And so, Adam, let's start with you. Been, really just been a week or so since you've been here. The last time you were here was for your great Age of the Earth debate with Dr. Dino. Tons of fun. Lots of great feedback and interaction with that debate, that's for sure. So Adam, tell us, how have you been since then? And also tell us a little bit about your channel, Curious Christianity.
Yeah, no need to downplay it, Donnie. It was a great debate last week. So debating Kent and debating Phelan. And so, I've been plenty busy, primarily setting up for these debates, doing a little bit of teaching outside of here. And so Curious Christianity is really a place where I'm really looking to challenge some of the assumptions and presuppositions that many of us perhaps have grown up with, sometimes in Christianity, and also to challenge the assumptions of atheism on occasion. And so I think that we should all be conscious of our own perceived biases and grow in our understanding and truth about things. And so I'm really here to talk about the Bible. What does the Bible say? And to try and get a closer understanding of what God's been saying the whole time.
Hey, well said. It's why we host these debates and these important discussions. It gets us out of our theological echo chambers, brings us together in the debate octagon to discuss our differences, defend our positions, and hopefully come closer to the truth, and also provide edifying content and material for the audience. Maybe there's people in the audience that are on the fence or they're agnostic on whatever issue is being debated. And so the goal is to analyze and examine these debates in an objective manner. So Adam, appreciate that introduction. And for those who want to see more from you, I do have your channel linked in the description box for people to check out. So
just look for my squirrel.
There you go. Yeah, I can't miss it. One of a kind. Okay. And Adam, you're right. You did 2 debates last week. You got one tonight. You got another one coming up on annihilationism. And so
is it right next week or
I think it is. Time flies by, and so all these days seem to blend together. But I will say to the audience, check the upcoming live stream section, and you'll see links to all of the upcoming programs, including Praise. You're going to be back here as well for a God versus non-God worldview. So Praise, great to have you back. And the last time you were here was in terms of formal debates. I think, if I'm not mistaken, was it your 2 debates there with Caleb Percher, one on monarchianism?
Yep. Yeah, and one with Sean as well.
Yep, Sean. So you did a salvation debate there. So Praise, great to have you back for another formal debate. Tell us a little bit about yourself and also your channel, Praise I Am.
Well, it's great to be here, Donnie. I'm thrilled to discuss this topic. And this is my first time interacting with Adam, and soul sleep is such an intriguing topic. But I appreciate him, agreed to this debate. But my channel is really predicated on apologetics, the Trinity, free grace, the soteriology. We usually go late at night, and we open it up to different people if they want to express, any type of objections, if they want to raise any objections, and we let them speak, and we interact, and it's fun. And I hope people check out the channel. We cover an array of topics, but mostly mostly in apologetics, debate reviews, and yeah, man, I appreciate you being here. I'm thrilled to get going.
Thank you, Praise. I appreciate the comprehensive nature of both your channels. Adam and Tom, you both, put out a lot of great material. Praise, you put on some good open mics and give people the freedom to join and discuss a variety of topics. So, Adam, Tom, you guys are well studied. I know, well versed in the topic at hand. Again, the resolution being believers do not go to heaven when they die. Adam taking the affirmative, Praise taking the negative. And so, okay, again, if you like what you're hearing tonight from our guests, Adam and Praise, do check the description box for links to their channels. Okay, let's go over tonight's format. And so we have a thorough one for everybody on the topic. We've got 15-minute opening statements starting with Adam, followed by 2 rebuttals. So first rebuttal will be 10 minutes. Second rebuttal will be 5. Then we're going to jump into 2 cross-examinations. So this will be 20 minutes each for our debaters tonight to lead the way in cross-exam and therefore questions. Then we're going to have a round of free-flowing dialogue. So rather than real strict cross-exam, this will be between 15 and 20 minutes of just a free-flowing discussion, conversation style. Then we'll have a 5-minute closing statement where Adam and Praise can wrap up their thoughts and points for tonight's Great Soul Sleep Showdown. Then this is where we get you guys in the audience. We'll have a roughly 25-minute audience Q&A. And so please, if you do have a question for our guest, do your best to tag me either at Donnie or at Standing for Truth. And then also let me know who the question's for, Adam or Praise. Okay, let's get right into the fun and our first opening statement now that we've broken the ice and we're all acquainted. Adam, I'm going to hand you the floor. And okay, floor is yours. You got 15 minutes.
All righty. Thank you, Donnie and Tom, for tonight's debate. Tonight's debate will be an uphill battle for me, I'm sure, as I'm defending the view that believers do not go to heaven when they die. This is the starting view that most hold to coming into this debate, so I understand that it will be challenging for me. I can understand if you do not arrive at my position after tonight's debate. But I ask you to open your mind and reconsider some of your thoughts about the subject of heaven. I don't ask you to simply open your mind for no apparent reasons, but instead, of course, I ask you to inspect the scriptures. Find out if what I am saying is true, or if we have grabbed a hold of some presuppositions and views that others have merely handed us. So, while I am taking the affirmative, I am, in fact, going to try and unwind some of the beliefs that have been taught in churches for so many years, because I believe that the biblical position to take is that believers do not go to heaven when they die. My opening presentation will be a little different than normal. My opening will be focused on setting the stage for tonight's debate. In order to properly understand tonight's subject matter, we will have to correctly understand the context in which the words of Jesus and the apostles are being given. If we, however, read into the text our own ideas of heaven, we may not be hearing what they intended, but what we intend. So, let's begin with the Old Testament. The Old Testament teaches that Sheol is the place of the dead. This is where all the dead go, both the righteous and the wicked. Let's listen to this sample of passages. Genesis 37:35. All his sons and daughters came to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. No, he said, I will continue to mourn until I join my son in Sheol. So his father wept for him. This is referring to Jacob. Numbers 16:30. But if Yahweh creates an entirely new thing, and the ground opens its mouth and swallows them up with all that is theirs, and they go down to Sheol alive, then you will know that these men have spurned Yahweh. Psalm 16:10. Because you will not abandon me to the grave, or Sheol, nor will you let your faithful one see decay. And then Ecclesiastes 9:10. Whatever your hand finds to do, Do it with all your might. For in the realm of the dead, Sheol, where you are going, there is neither working, nor planning, nor knowledge, nor wisdom. This was the understanding when we come to the New Testament. All who go down to death will be in Sheol. That is what it means. This should not be controversial, but it might be made clear that this was the mindset of the New Testament believers and the apostles themselves. There is no foreshadowing in the Old Testament or in eschatology in general that those who put their faith in God will go to heaven. The issue is that modern Christians have assumed heaven as the primary place where believers go, yet when the biblical evidence is examined, it is found lacking. What does the Old Testament teach about the afterlife and the hope for those who put their faith in God? Now, let's also look at what the Old Testament teaches about resurrection. The Old Testament teaches the doctrine of the resurrection of the dead. This is the context for understanding the New Testament and the belief of the New Testament believers. It is important because if we do not understand the context of the New Testament, then we will misunderstand the teaching of the apostles and Jesus. What passages in the Old Testament teach resurrection? Exodus 3:6. He said also, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Then Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. This may sound like a strange verse at first, but if you are a Christian today, it is one of the strongest verses speaking of the resurrection. Why is that verse strong? It is strong because this is the verse that Jesus quoted back to the Sadducees when he was challenged on the resurrection of the dead. If it's good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for me. Let's continue. Psalm 17:15. As for me, I shall behold your face in righteousness. I will be satisfied with your likeness when I awake. Daniel 12:2. And many of those who fell asleep in the dust of the ground will be awake, these to everlasting life, but the others to reproach and everlasting contempt. And then Job 19:25 through 26. As for me, I know that my Redeemer lives, and at the last he will rise up over the dust of this world, even after my skin is destroyed. Yet from my flesh I shall behold God. Resurrection was the promise of the Old Testament. That was the whole point of the promises that God made to the ancient patriarchs. The point was not that he would fulfill everything that he had promised them during their life, but that all he said would come true and be fulfilled in the resurrection. Resurrection was the hope of the future. There was never a hope in an intermediate state. In fact, to suggest there was hope in an intermediate state would by its own nature undercut the teaching of the resurrection. To live in a disembodied state was never the hope of the Old Testament. The hope was always the resurrection of the dead. Okay, now the New Testament. The New Testament teaches resurrection. The doctrine of the New Testament is resurrection. Let's look at John 11:23 through 27. Here is the story of Lazarus being raised from the dead. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live, even if he dies. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die, ever. Do you believe this? She said to him, yes, Lord. I have believed that you are the Christ, the Son of God, the one who comes into the world. Martha says that she knows that he will be raised at the resurrection on the last day. Jesus does not correct her about the resurrection on the last day. He corrects her by saying that he is the resurrection and then proceeds to raise Lazarus from the dead. There is no teaching of an intermediate state here. The teaching remains that upon Christ's return, he will raise the dead. This is the teaching of the resurrection taught throughout the Old Testament. In the same fashion, there is nothing in eschatology that teaches an intermediate state. I encourage the listener to look at what the New Testament teaches concerning resurrection. 1 Thessalonians 4:13 through 18. But we do not want you to be uninformed, brethren, about those who are asleep, so that you will not grieve as do the rest who have no hope. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so God will bring with him those who have fallen asleep in Jesus. For this we say to you, by the word of the Lord, that we who are alive remain until the coming of the Lord will not precede those who have fallen asleep. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. So shall always we be with the Lord. Therefore, comfort one another with these words. Paul encourages those who are alive that have fallen asleep, or those who have fallen asleep in Jesus. He does not say that they are in heaven. He uses the same language as the Old Testament. He says that they are asleep. He encourages them by telling them that they will be resurrected upon the return of Christ. His encouragement is that the righteous will be resurrected first. It is the resurrection that he encourages the church with, and not an intermediate state. This is one example of the teaching about resurrection in the New Testament. But please check out other passages: Matthew 22, Mark 12, Luke 20, John 5, John 11, Romans 1, Romans 6, Romans 8, James 1, 1 Peter 1, 1 Corinthians 15, 2 Corinthians 4, 1 Thessalonians 4, Philippians 3, Acts 4, Acts 24, Acts 26. The teaching of the New Testament is resurrection and not of an intermediate state. Lastly, I offer you an argument from justice. According to the Bible, there is one judgment for the righteous and the wicked. This is critical to understand, for if my opponent wants to claim that there are people in heaven, but others who are not, he must explain how this is possible and consistent with the justice of God mentioned in the Bible. If some have been rewarded and others punished, how is that possible without judgment? I suggest to you, it is not possible nor reasonable. Instead, listen to what the Bible says about judgment. Jeremiah 17:10. I, Yahweh, search the heart. I test the innermost being, even to give each man according to his ways, according to the fruit of his deeds. Matthew 12:36. But I tell you that every careless word that people speak, they shall give an accounting for in the day of judgment. John 5:28-29. Do not marvel at this, for the hour is coming in which all who are in their graves will hear his voice and come forth. Those who have done good to the resurrection of life, and those who have done evil to the resurrection of condemnation. 2 Corinthians 5:10. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that each one may receive the things done in the body according to what he has done, whether good or bad. And then Hebrews 9:7. Inasmuch as it is appointed for men to die once, and after this comes judgment. There is only one day of judgment. Nowhere in the Bible is it taught that there are 2 days of judgment. Are the righteous judged before the day of judgment? No, they're not. There is only one judgment for both the righteous and the wicked. The day of judgment will come upon the return of Christ and the great resurrection. Therefore, if believers are not judged prior to the resurrection, by what stance can you dictate or say that they go to heaven, seemingly to be rewarded, or to say the wicked go to hell in some sort of fashion as well, to be punished? You cannot. So we arrive then at this funny arena. The doctrine of heaven, to me, is a doctrine that does not exist. Why did we go through all of the other texts that I was explaining? The reason is that when we come to the New Testament, we need to hold the views from the Old Testament. We cannot begin by believing that believers go to heaven and then start from that presupposition. We should begin with the same beliefs as the New Testament Jews. This provides the context for the New Testament. If we read a passage out of context, then we are sure to misinterpret it. There is a belief that after the cross, things changed. After Jesus was resurrected, that meant that believers would go to heaven. It is nearly universally accepted that people did not go to heaven before the cross of Christ. So perhaps we won't have to debate about that. Then there is a sharp shift where Christians today believe that upon death, a Christian will go to heaven. There's only one problem. There is no teaching from the New Testament that says this. I challenge my opponent to show where the New Testament teaches this doctrine that believers go to heaven, and I look forward to the dialogue that follows. So the reason this is an uphill battle for me is because I'm fighting against a belief system and a doctrine that to me does not seem to be taught in the New Testament. I am sure he will give examples that he thinks are persuasive. But I ask you, as the listener, pay attention closely. What is taught in the New Testament as doctrine? Because there is a difference in what the Bible is prescribing to you as a believer. Learn this, understand this. This is what will happen. And what is descriptive. And then they said this, and then this happened. We must not mistake simple imagery for being hard reality, but instead, we should understand what are the images depicting, what is meant by what's being said. For if we only wanted to woodenly read every single passage of the Bible, we would miss its tremendous nuances. When Jesus says he is the door, we all understand what it is he means. And so as we go through this, read your Bibles carefully and make sure that we're understanding the context in every passage. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Adam, for that first opening statement for today's debate. We've got praise right here. And okay, let's reset the timer. To anybody in the audience just joining us, we will be having an audience Q&A after closing statement. So if you got questions, challenge passages dealing with the topic of soul sleep, do send those in, tag me, and we'll have some fun interacting with those. Okay, praise I am. We are going to reset the timer. You have 15 minutes, and I do see your slides shared at the bottom. So I'll pull that up, and once you get that in full screen and it's ready to go.
That's not fair. His slides are cooler than mine.
All right. I'm all set to go.
All right. Floor is yours. 15 minutes. Go ahead.
I'm just going to call the intermediate state tonight, the immortality of the soul, but specifically believers going to heaven. So Enoch, Moses, and Elijah declare the intermediate state is a reality. It is important to note that soul sleep can only apply to some people, not everyone, because the Bible records 3 individuals as existing in the intermediate state. This renders the concept of soul sleep inconclusive at best. Enoch was taken to heaven as stated in Genesis 5:24 and Hebrews 11:5. Moses and Elijah appeared on the Mount of Transfiguration, and Peter confirms it was neither metaphorical nor a dream in 2 Peter 1:18 through 19. He affirms it as a real historical event. Furthermore, Elijah is foretold to return to the earth in the end of the days, as stated in Malachi 4:5. According to 2 Kings 2:11, he was taken up in a whirlwind. Abraham gathered to his people. The phrase gathered to his people appears only 10 times in the Old Testament. And within the Pentateuch and the Old Testament, the whole Old Testament, the Tanakh. In Genesis 25:8, it is distinct from both death, verse 8a, and burial, verse 9, suggesting a reunion of the deceased with their forefathers. This passage highlights a fourfold process. Pay attention. An individual breathes their last dying breath before they are gathered to one's relatives. And being gathered to one's relatives occurs before burial. Therefore, the phrase gathered to one's people cannot merely refer to being laid in a grave. Instead, it implies either belief in continued existence in the netherworld or the idea that the spirit of the deceased joins their ancestors in the afterlife, preserving family unity even beyond death. Of the six individuals in the Pentateuch to whom the phrase gathered to as kin is applied, Abraham, Genesis 25:8, Ishmael, Genesis 25:17, Isaac, Genesis 35:29, and Jacob, Genesis 49:29 and 33, Moses, Numbers 27:13, Deuteronomy 32:50, and Aaron, Numbers 20:24, and Deuteronomy 32:50. 4 were not even buried in an ancestral grave: Abraham, Ishmael, and Moses and Aaron. Sheol actually is the confinement place for the spirits in the afterlife. We'll touch upon this with Adam in our open discussion, but Adam asks, what is the judgment? Well, here it is. It's a confinement place, the separation of those who were redeemed and those who were not redeemed. So there's activity in Sheol. Sheol is often described as being located beneath the earth within the hollow depths. The prophet Isaiah provides a vivid depiction. Sheol below is excited about you to meet you when you come. It stirs the spirits of the dead, all the leaders of the earth. It raises all the kings of the nations from their thrones. Isaiah 14:9. This passage suggests that Sheol is a realm of activity, not merely a resting place for lifeless bodies. Second, Sheol is described as a shadowy realm of darkness separate from this natural existence. The prophet Ezekiel foretold that Tyre would be brought down with those who go down to the pit, to the people of old, and with those who go down to the pit. And he says, I shall make you remain in the lower parts of the earth like the ancient ruins with those who go down to the pit Sheol, so that you will not be inhabited, but I will put glory in the land of the living, Ezekiel 26:20. Sheol is without measure. Sheol is described in Isaiah 5:14 as never being satisfied and limitless in the number of those who go there. Since the earth has physical limitations, Sheol cannot be an earthly location. Also, Sheol is referred to as the center of the earth. Since sepulchres are above ground, they cannot represent the place which Jesus descended, as described in Ephesians 4:9 and referenced as the center of the earth in Matthew 12:40. Additionally, 1 Peter 3:18-20 connects this descent to the time when his body was in the tomb, thereby fulfilling the references in Ephesians 4:9 and Matthew 12:40. This passage also notes that he preached to the spirits in prison, indicating Sheol or Hades is not a physical location. Also, Jesus raises Jairus' daughter, insights into the intermediate state. In Luke 8:55, we read, and her spirit returned, and she arose immediately, and he commanded that something should be given to her to eat. This passage is part of the account which Jesus raises Jairus' daughter from the dead. The phrase her spirit return uses the Greek term epistrepho, which in this context describes the girl's spirit coming back to her body, suggesting a reuniting of her spirit with her physical form. The choice of word reinforces the idea that her spirit had in some way turned away or departed at her death, and Jesus's command was able to turn back to her body, restoring her life. So this depiction aligns with certain perspectives on the intermediate state, which propose that upon physical death, a person's soul or spirit temporarily exists apart from the body until the resurrection. In this view, the spirit neither ceases to exist nor enters a state of unconsciousness, aka soul sleep, but instead remains in the intermediate condition awaiting resurrection. The detail that her spirit returns implies that it had departed at the moment of her death, supporting the understanding. Also, Paul met a man in the third heaven he knew 14 years earlier. 2 Corinthians 12:2 mentions that Paul saw a man that he had known 14 years earlier while in the third heaven. Keep this in mind. This is very important. In Jewish cosmology, the third heaven is often understood as the highest realm, the dwelling place of God beyond the sky and the starry heavens. This implies that Paul had knowledge of someone in the intermediate state. Paradise is a term used elsewhere in Scripture. Example, Luke 23:43, to describe a place of blessing where the righteous dwell with God after death. Paul's vivid recollection of inexpressible things in 2 Corinthians 12:4 suggests that the soul retains both consciousness and the capacity for spiritual communion apart from the body. This inexpressibility of what Paul heard emphasizes the mysterious and transcendent nature of the intermediate state. It is real and glorious, yet beyond full human comprehension. Paul's uncertainty about where he was in the body or out of the body in 2 Corinthians 12:2-3 strongly suggests that human existence is not confined to a physical embodiment. This aligns with the biblical teaching that the soul remains conscious and continues to exist after death. Families are currently in the third heaven. Paul in Ephesians 3:14 bows in the present active indicative, his knees to the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. Then says in verse 15, of whom the whole family in heaven is named. It's a present indicative verb. So the word family, patria, is only used 2 times. One time translated David's lineage in Luke 2:4, and all the families of the earth being blessed through Abraham in Acts 3:25. This verse can only be consistent if they're symmetrical, meaning if we know families on the earth are human, and then it follows that the families in heaven are also humans, also or one-time humans. Ephesians 2:19 says, saints are the household of God, period. Philippians 3:20 says, our citizenship is in heaven. Revelation 5:3 states that no one in heaven or under the earth was found worthy, implying that existence of 2 distinct sides of Hades. At this point in Revelation, no one has yet been deemed worthy to open up the scroll, signifying that the tribulation sequence has not even begun. Since the opening of the seals in Revelation 6 marks the start of the tribulation, the events of Revelation 5:3 must occur beforehand. The search for someone worthy to open up the scroll represents a preparation phase, emphasizing that the Lamb's worthiness and redemptive work. This aligns with a time of readiness before the tribulation unfolds. And now I say unto you, today you shall be with me in paradise. I say unto you this day, the phrase I say unto you this day was a well-known Hebrew idiom understood to refer to that exact day, emphasizing the solemnity of the occasion and the significance of the word spoken. This idiom is evident in numerous passages throughout the Deuteronomy, including Deuteronomy 4:26, 29, 45, 6, 6, 7, 11, 8, 1, 8, 11, 8, 19, 9, 3, 10, 13, 11, all the way through 32, 46. Jesus employed 2 parallel constructions without the conjunction hoti, that. So first in Luke 4:21, he began to say unto them, this day, this scripture is fulfilled in your ears. And second, in Luke 19:9, and Jesus said unto them, or him, this day is salvation come into the house, in this house. For so much as he also is the son of Abraham, why are these statements not contested as references to a future resurrection or at that time of the resurrection? Jesus would have said, on the last day, you'll be with me in paradise. That's what would have been said, because the Jews commonly understood such language when referring to the day of the resurrection, as seen in John 6:39, 40, 44, 54, 65, John 11:24, and John 12:48. Also, martyrs await to be avenged in the third heaven. Luke 18:7-8 states that the chosen ones cry out to God day and night to be avenged. The phrase crying out day and night conveys an unceasing appeal in the third heaven, as also depicted in Revelation 20:10. This cry is for God to avenge them, indicating that these chosen ones are past martyrs. Revelation 6:9-10 confirms this, as John describes the souls under the altar crying out to God for vengeance. The fact that God is not avenged them demonstrates this cannot refer to the day of resurrection or interpreted figuratively. Only martyrs are avenged. Consider, for example, Genesis 4:10, where Abel's blood cries out for vengeance. It is crucial to distinguish between deliverance and avenging. Saints are delivered on earth, while martyrs will one day be avenged. Also, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. 2 Corinthians 5:1 establishes the foundation for verse 8 by using the present active indicative verb have ekomen. To affirm the possession of a house in the third heaven eternally, we are absent from our earthly bodies. Paul used the present active indicative form ekomen 20 times in his writings, and not once did he use it in a future sense. Examples include Romans 5:1, 12:4, Romans 15:4, Galatians 2:4, Galatians 6:10, Ephesians 1:7, Ephesians 2:18, Ephesians 3:12, Colossians 1:14, 2 Thessalonians 3:9, and so on. So Paul refers to a place. Paul is referring to a place, not a future body. Resurrection is not mentioned anywhere in this passage. Hebrews 9:11 and Acts 7:48 further confirm that the house not made with hands is a present reality. This understanding explains why Paul declares in Philippians 1:23 that it is far better to depart with Christ. Saul summons Samuel the prophet, who already died. First, both Saul and the woman identified the figure as Samuel, and the inspired writer himself confirms this identification. Verse 15 explicitly states, Samuel said to Paul,
30 seconds.
Furthermore, the summoned figure conveyed in the message Samuel had previously delivered, the life the Lord had done to you spoken. I'm just going to have to finish this out. Therefore, Samuel came not to command at the which, the expected will of God, but I think we'll probably just leave it from there. And with that, I'll end my time. Thank you so much.
All right, gentlemen, that concludes 15-minute opening statements. Great job to the both of you on, again, a controversial topic. And you both have clearly put in the work, time, energy, and effort to put together some interesting opening statements with lots of points and arguments to now engage in not one rebuttal, but two. So we have a 10-minute rebuttal, Adam and Tom, and then we also have a 5-minute rebuttal. And so, Adam, we are going to throw it back to you. And whenever you're ready, please let me know. I'll start the timer, and you have 10 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Tom, for that very interesting presentation. So there's so much you said. I will get to as much of it as I possibly can. Now, first of all, I just want to remind everyone what tonight's debate is about. Now, I understand Tom was making a general presentation against soul sleep and those things, so don't hold it against him. But many of these arguments will not apply to tonight's debate. For example, he makes mention of, okay, there are these intermediate states from the Old Testament. That's fine. Like it doesn't really say anything about rather believers go to heaven or not when they die, unless he's proposing that the intermediate state from the Old Testament is that believers go to heaven. And if that is the case, then I'd be very interested in hearing what he has to say about that. So now he also brings up several other examples, and I'm going to go through some of these quickly and some I will spend more time on. But a couple that I will spend less time on are going to be Moses and Elijah. I don't really understand how this is an argument for or against any of these positions. This basically is, to me, a complete non-starter. Let's imagine for a moment that Moses and Elijah were in heaven prior to this, transfiguration. Okay, so then they would have had to been pulled from heaven down to the transfiguration. Okay, so then how could they have been in heaven? And it's like, well, simple. They would have been in heaven and then they would have came down to the transfiguration. Okay, got it. Okay, what if soul sleep was true? Okay, if soul sleep was true, then God would have had to have woken them up and brought them to the Mount of Transfiguration. It doesn't matter, rather, if you hold to the heaven view or the soul sleep view, they both have to leave wherever it was they were in order to go to the Mount of Transfiguration. So I don't see how this is an argument for or against any of these positions. Elijah, he mentions Elijah. Oh, Elijah will come back. So okay, cool. Elijah will come back, but Elijah did come back. He came back as John the Baptist. So again, number one, this shows that it wasn't talking about the literal, physical, bodily Elijah, but rather it was John the Baptist. And two, even if he does come back, that seems irrelevant to me. Let's imagine somebody is sleeping. Okay, cool. They come back. Again, this doesn't really have much to do with heaven, it seems to me. Oh, he mentions the idea that Samuel is called up. Okay, fine. Doesn't that seem like, oh, Samuel was what? In the grave. He's in Sheol. God brought him up. Big deal. He mentions the idea that ancestors or that patriarchs went to their ancestors. Sure. Again, I don't really understand what this is supposed to prove. But the other thing is that I wonder, is he saying that simple, all rose and went to their ancestors? Has he looked at the list of bad kings who have gone to their ancestors, such as Rehoboam, Jeroboam, Ahab? It says Ahab rested with his ancestors. So are we supposed to say that, yeah, Ahab and Abraham, they're both hanging out together? Because you know what? It uses the same thing. They rested with their ancestors. So there really isn't anything new or nuanced there. It simply has to do with the idea that Sheol was the place of the dead. Both the righteous and the wicked went there. That, to me, seems to be the clear teaching of the Old Testament. Now, let's see here. He makes several other interesting appeals. So he mentions the martyrs in heaven from Revelation 6 and these. And I thought it was very interesting because he also mentions the blood of Abel. That's basically what this passage is talking about. I mean, or what are we saying about the blood of Abel? The blood of Abel cries out from the ground. What is Revelation doing? It is giving us the same type of imagery and depiction that the blood of the martyrs cries out for justice. It cries out for justice. But what is it? It's a vision. It's the, apocalypse of John. There's no real reason to suspect that this is a physical depiction of what is going on in heaven. I think he would have to provide some arguments to show why we should think that it's literal. And if he wants to say that it is literal, I guess I'm thinking the martyrs don't seem like they have a great life in heaven, since all they do is cry out for their blood and the redemption. Now, let's try and move on to a few of the other ones that he made that were a little bit more substantive. 2 Corinthians 5, 1 through 10. Now, he asserts that this cannot be some sort of new body. And he's given some arguments as to why it cannot be, but it seems quite to the contrary to me, since most of us know and understand that my body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. That is what it is. And so when Paul in verse 1 says, "For we know that if our earthly tent, which is our house, is torn down, we have a building from God, a house not made by hands, eternal in the heavens." Yes, Paul is talking about the resurrected bodies that we will receive. For if we take off that which is perishable, we shall inherit that which is imperishable. Why should we believe that this is the case? Finish the rest of the verses, right? Then once you go down to verses 8, 9, and 10, right? And first off, it does not say that to be absent from the body is to be present from the Lord. Oddly enough, you cut off the earlier parts of the verse. Paul says, but if we are of good courage and we prefer rather to be absent from the body and to be at home with the Lord. He is not making an ontological statement about bodies and being spiritually absent from the physical body, but rather at home or absent to be pleasing to him. We must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ. When Paul says before the judgment seat of Christ, that is an eschatological statement referring to the return of Christ and the judgment seat at the resurrection. So therefore, it shows why it's talking about all these things. And at the judgment seat is where we will receive a new tent from God. So again, 2 Corinthians 5 is talking about the resurrection of the dead. Now, he mentions the thief on the cross. This is the one that sticks for most people. And yes, he asserts very boldly and certainly, it says today. It says today. But you know what? There's another verse that reminds me of this. Genesis 2:17. But from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you shall not eat from it. For in the day that you eat, you will surely die. Many atheists and skeptics have listed this verse as a straight up contradiction. Do you believe as a Christian that this is a contradiction? Why would it be a contradiction? Because the day that Adam and Eve ate from the tree, they did not literally, physically die. So what's the issue? It's not talking as straightforward as it may sound, because it's referring to their eventual death, right? They will be doomed to die. Now, let's say that we take him at his word. It is literal. Today you'll be with me in paradise. This is my question. Is this simply a contradiction then? For it appears that, as the rest of the New Testament testifies, Jesus is in the grave for 3 days and 3 nights. Matthew 12:40, for as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a huge fish, so the Son of Man will be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. So if Jesus is in the heart of the earth for 3 days, then how could he be in paradise? Instead, what I would suggest, and not to pull any of the comma business that is so prevalent amongst others, to suggest that, oh, well, it's simply a matter of a misplaced comma. I think that number one, we need to look at the context. What does the thief on the cross say? The thief on the cross says, Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And I don't think that it has to be that much more complicated than Jesus giving a pastoral admonition. Yes, today you will be with me in paradise. He is assuring him that he will be with him. But it is not saying that it's literally the same day, because Christ doesn't ascend to heaven for 43 days. So is there a contradiction in the text? Or is Jesus giving some good pastoral advice and encouraging them that today is the day of his salvation, that based on his public profession of faith, he will be with Christ eternally? And lastly, this just goes back to the judgment argument I listed earlier. If there is no jurisprudence, if there is no judgment, how can we earnestly say that the thief should be thought to have gone to paradise, since the great day of judgment has not occurred? Thank you for your time.
And that is 10 minutes on the dot. Adam, it's as if you've done this before. As a matter of fact, 3 times within basically the last week. So, Adam, thank you for the 10-minute rebuttal. I will reset the timer and now hand it back to Praise I Am. You get a 10-minute rebuttal. Go ahead. Praise, you're on mute. Your audio was raptured.
Oh, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right. So I appreciate that, Adam. I'm going to start with point by point. And Adam mentions that Sheol was the place of the dead. And I wouldn't disagree with that. And there's, first of all, Sheol has a range of meaning. The fact it is never plural indicates why it can mean several things. Sheol is simply poetically. So we have to remember the framework or the context of Sheol. It is poetic. And it means grave, not a grave, but it just means grave. Because Kibur, Bor, Shekath, Gadish actually mean a individual grave. For instance, Job 7:9-10 says, as a cloud vanishes is gone, so he who goes down to Sheol does not come back. He never returns to his house. His place remembers them no more. This is clearly talking about corpses, not people's spirits. And I think tonight, the distinction, we really need to make this distinction to the soul sleepers. We're not saying that bodies go to heaven. The bodies remain here, and sometimes we would even say that we're waiting for the redemption of our body when Jesus returns. But that doesn't annihilate our existence. So I do want to go to the next point, resurrection of the dead in Daniel 12:10. And this is a typical go-to for soul sleepers, and there's so much that needs to be laid out on this and explained. So Daniel 12:2 and John 5:28-29 are coupled together. We need to be careful how we do hermeneutics here. So these passages aren't talking about the resurrection of people's bodies, but rather eternal life and eternal damnation. Daniel 12:10 plainly states it's about a soteriological condition rather than the state of the dead. Jesus in John 5:24 says, when one believes, they are moved from death to life. And in verse 25, Jesus says, all will hear his voice, but only the ones who hear his voice will live, making it a condition. If this was talking about physical resurrection, then it would be unconditional, but it is not. The ones who heard and believed did good and will partake in the first resurrection, who cannot be affected by the second death, as Revelation 2:11 states. The ones who didn't hear and believe are abiding in death and didn't do good. Therefore, they will be hurt by the second death. So let's move on to the next point. He goes on to 1 Thessalonians 4, and I do want to talk about that briefly as well. There's so much that goes into these, and I'm just encouraging people to do more research and not just go by what a tradition or a viewpoint says. But 1 Thessalonians 4:14, the asleep here is a euphemism for death, not unconsciousness. Paul indicates that the dead in Christ are with him prior to the resurrection. Matthew 25:31 states, saints accompany Christ upon his return, implying they are not in a state of sleep or some type of state of unconsciousness. So, and then the judgment of God. So I don't understand how, even in Hebrews, it says that it is appointed for men once to die, then the judgment. So men, it's not even talking about believers, it's talking about men. So there is a judgment that happens immediately after one departs this world. The judgment is either a separation. You either go to Abraham's bosom, the site of rejoicing, or the side where the rich man went, where it's weeping and gnashing of teeth and torment, mental torment. We can get into Luke 16. There's so much in Luke 16, but it is clear there is a distinction, a separation, a chasm that separates the redeemed and the non-redeemed. Because there is no good. There's only one good God. So I'm not going to say the good people go to because that's just untrue. So then he went into John 5. And I think I just went into John 5. I can briefly state some of those points. again, to reiterate them. So Jesus is talking about hearing John 5:24 through all the way through 28 and 29. So you need to go back a few verses to get the full context. Moving from death to life is a judicial soteriological action that God does to you. It's a forensic declaration. There's nothing here about anthropology. This isn't anthropological. This is soteriological. I don't know how you connect it. I mean, so the soul sleepers, I don't know how they connect this to some state of the dead. And I think that is going over what the text, the bounds of the text requires. I think it's eisegesis or eisegetical to add that in there. Yes, Old Testament saints go to heaven. And we know Elijah was taken in a whirlwind into heaven. He wasn't in the ground somewhere. He isn't in a state of unconsciousness. If the angels are conscious, why would anyone in heaven be unconscious? I think that's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous notion to even go down that road. So what happens is that people, unfortunately, they impose their postmodern views of how, like, philosophy, psychology, and they try to impose it in the text. Let's just go with what the text is trying to tell us. That Elijah was taken in the world. When Enoch was taken, he didn't experience death at all. He's in heaven. He was translated. We don't need to say, what is he sleeping in heaven? So God doesn't sleep. If God is a spirit, and we have spirits, God created, he formed, it says in Zechariah 12:1, he formed the spirit within us. So there's something in us that is purely by God, that has the essence, the substance of God. That is a spirit that doesn't sleep. Now, our physical bodies do sleep. And that is the dynamic that we need to understand. There's a dualistic aspect to human beings, an immaterial and a physical together. I think I'll end it there because I'm going to get to other points in the second rebuttal, but I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Praise, if you'd like to, you can get to a couple of those points now because you have 2.5 minutes.
Sure. I wanted to finish I didn't get a chance to finish the spirit that Saul was brought up. Yeah, Samuel was brought up, and to me, like, it was unfortunate we didn't get into the point. So let me just reiterate some of the points. So the summoned figure conveyed the same message Samuel had previously delivered in life. The Lord. So if there was a demon or something like that, why would this apparition, or whatever you want to call it, or spirit of Samuel, why would it give prophecy? It's giving prophecy. Did you know the prophecy was in 1 Samuel 28:19? That means God used demons to fulfill prophecy. I think that's ridiculous. And if that is the case, then yes, this is a divine inspired text. I think if people take the demonic route, then you have to check your inspiration. What do you believe in inspiration? But also, he gave the same truth as that Samuel told Saul before he died. The Lord has done to you as he spoke by me, for the Lord has torn the kingdom out of your hand and given it to your neighbor David. He said the exact same thing before he was dead. Why would a lying spirit, some type of demonic entity, tell him truth? Like, if anything, they would deceive him into something else that is untrue, or make him feel like he's in good shape. So another thing is, when the woman saw Samuel, the medium, she cried out with a loud voice. She was surprised, because she was used to her familiar spirits there. So this was a spirit of God. This was a revelation from God, that God intervened here and allowed Samuel to speak to Saul. So all these
10 seconds.
all these factors make it clear that there are spirits in the third heaven, and sometimes they can communicate with us on earth. And with that, I end my time. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Praise. Gentlemen, that concludes now our 15-minute openings and 10-minute rebuttals. Before we move into our second rebuttal, which will be 5 minutes, so it'll be a little more fast-paced than our previous one here that we just ended of 10 minutes, I do want to remind our lively live chat. It looks like we got a solid mix of views in the chat with some passionate discussion going on. So send me some questions, send me some challenges. We'll have some fun interacting with those. Adam, we're now moving into rebuttal round 2. Gentlemen, I want you to make each other sweat. So let's go. Bring the heat. You've been bringing the heat, though. This is good, making each other sweat. So here we go. Round 2, 5 minutes starts now. Go ahead.
Unfortunately, I feel like my opponent is largely arguing with a ghost. Most of his arguments, I feel like, are completely irrelevant as to whether or not the believers go to heaven. So let's give a couple of these things. Now, the one thing that it did seem like actually did hit on the topic is the idea of Elijah. Elijah went to heaven. I'm very curious to see if he is proposing that all of the Old Testament saints went to heaven. I'm not aware of any major scholars or proponents who believe this. So if that is what you're saying, Tom, I'd be very curious to see some further evidence for that. Now, concerning Elijah, I feel like you have not read any of the latest work on this, but I will contest that wholeheartedly, in that Elijah actually never went to heaven at all. And that might sound weird and is not worthy of just this entire debate. But Elijah writes a letter 4 years after the time that he supposedly went to heaven. He writes it to one of the kings of Israel. There's an entire paper written on this showing that most people have simply overlooked the fact that Elijah doesn't seem to have ascended into the heaven, but rather it just meant he ascended into the cloud so they couldn't see him. It did not at all mean that he left the planet. So now for most of the other things that he said, he mentions like Samuel and demons, and I don't know what he's talking about. I believe it's a literal Samuel. God raised him up to speak to Paul. Okay, irrelevant. And it seems like you seem to be arguing against some sort of notion that I don't believe in dualism. I'm a dualist. So there's no real problem with there being spirits. If God wanted to raise up Samuel, fine. So are all of the Old Testament taken to heaven? I don't think so. Now he talks about John chapter 5. Oh, resurrection of life. He's talking about life. Yeah, when Jesus is talking about life in covenantal language, it is in reference to being resurrected to new life. Now in 1 Thessalonians, we talked a little bit about this idea, and Paul talks about some who are fallen asleep. And he says, yes, your bodies are asleep. This is a euphemism for death. Yes, it is a euphemism for death. But unless you can show me that all of the Old Testament saints were brought into heaven, which I don't think is shown in the Old Testament, nor is it taught, then none of this really matters. The reason I bring it up is because Paul is using the same language as the Old Testament saints. They fell asleep. Yeah, it's a euphemism for death. Just like the Old Testament, he's not teaching anything new, but instead he talks about what? The resurrection, just like I explained. And now the judgment argument. He says that, well, but what about this judgment argument? How is this relevant? And there's all these other things. It's relevant, simple, because judgment takes place at the resurrection of Christ. Let's look at Luke 14. When you give a reception, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed, since they do not have their means to repay you, for it will be repaid to you at the resurrection of righteousness. Matthew 16:27. For the Son of Man is going to come in glory of his Father and with his angels, and will then repay every man according to his deeds. The time of repayment for the wicked and the righteous is upon the resurrection of the dead. So therefore, how is it that those are seem to be rewarded and punished prior to the judgment of God? Are you suggesting that people are rewarded and punished arbitrarily, that there is no jurisprudence of God, that God has nothing to say? Or are you simply suggesting that, oh, there are two judgments? Where is that taught? Where does the Bible teach that there are two judgments? There's one judgment upon your death, and then there's a new judgment when Christ returns upon the resurrection. Haven't seen it, haven't heard it. Lastly, he briefly said, well, Lazarus and the rich man and all of that. I'm sure we'll get into that further, so I look forward to that. But in short, Lazarus and the rich man is a parable. It is not speaking of some sort of ontological reality, but it is a parable of Jesus, and therefore it doesn't really have much to say. But what's further? Let's imagine Lazarus and the rich man was more literal. Is Lazarus in heaven in the parable, in the story? No, he's not. So therefore, even if Lazarus and rich man were true, he would still not be in heaven. Thank you.
Adam, thank you very much for that 5-minute rebuttal. Let's reset the timer and praise. Once you are back on the screen and ready to go, we will give you your 5 minutes, and I'll start it on your first word. Go ahead.
Ed, if you could share my screen, Donnie. So I'll start now. So absolutely am I saying that the saints of the Old Testament are in the third heaven. We have to define what we mean by heaven, because technically the real heaven that is of the great white throne of judgment, where the heavenly Jerusalem, that doesn't happen until after the millennium, chronologically speaking. So yes, there are saints in the Old Testament and New Testament. They've joined together. And here's one in Hebrews 12:23, to the great assembly in the church of the firstborn, which are written in heaven, and to God, the judge of all, and to the spirits of the just men made perfect. So that'd be Abraham, that would be all sorts of Old Testament saints, even Paul and everyone else in between. And I'm going to go now to the, share my screen again, Donnie, with the, hold on a second. And I'm glad that Adam did, because I didn't know if he believed that. I thought he was a physicalist, because usually soul sleepers are physicalists. So yes, I'm going to give another evidence again. I'm going to try to make it, try to go through this more slow. So Abraham gathered to his people, but also it includes Ishmael, Moses, and Aaron specifically. But listen to this, the argument. I think the argument needs to be addressed. So first of all, that gathering to the phraseology, gathered to his people, it is distinct from death, verse 8. It is distinct from the burial, suggesting a reunion of the deceased forefathers. But let's continue on here. An individual breathes their last breath, dies, is gathered to their relatives, and then is buried. So the sequence is important. The sequence shows that dying happens before gathering to one's relatives. You don't gather to unconscious relatives. Relatives are conscious. And being gathered to one's relatives occurs before the burial. That is what needs to be addressed. And yes, we have evidence of Abraham, Ishmael, Moses, and Aaron specifically, who gathered to their ancestors or their people or their kin in heaven, the third heaven. And I'd like to ask Adam, and maybe in our open, or when we go across, when we talk to, in our open discussion, what do you mean by heaven, by the way? I think he needs to elucidate that a little bit. Maybe we can get that going. So in other words, gathered to one's people cannot merely refer to being laid in a grave. So it implies either a belief in continued existence in the netherworld or the idea of the spirit of the deceased. So one idea is that before the resurrection of Christ, that they would go to the bosom of Abraham waiting. So what happens, there is a chasm where the unbelievers and the believers are, and this is a place where they're awaiting judgment. It's a confinement. It's a confinement for the judgment. And one either goes to eternal life or one goes to the lake of fire. And it's really simple. And Adam says there's no judgments. There's judgments throughout the whole Old Testament on Israel. He judged Sodom and Gomorrah. This is in Jude. There's numerous judgments that God has done. I don't know what Adam's trying. I mean, really, and come on, man. God, Yahweh has done several judgments, not only in the Old Testament, but he's also even judged individuals. And what do you mean by judgment? Do you mean a judicial action where they're going to hell or heaven? Okay, yeah, but there's different judgments, though. There could be a judgment of the separation. There could be even John 5:24. They'll never come under judgment after those who believe. That's a judgment in time. So there's different types of judgments. It's not just this hardline wooden idea of just one judgment. I think he's assumed that. But again, we can maybe talk through that. But I appreciate. I'll probably end it there. Thank you so much.
Okay, good place to end it because that's 5 minutes. Gentlemen, we're moving along smoothly, comprehensive so far, as we've now had 15 minutes, 10 minutes, and 5 minutes. So that's basically 30 minutes each to make our case, present the necessary arguments and points, and then rebut those arguments and points. So now what we're going to do is jump into cross-exam. So we've got almost 60 minutes broken up into cross-examination and then also some free-flowing discussion. Okay, gentlemen? So we're going to start with the 20-minute segments each, though, to lead the way in cross-exam and questions for each other. Adam, we'll start with you. Praise just ended with his 5-minute rebuttal. And I'll start the timer on your first question. You got 20 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, there's a lot of different presuppositions that we're kind of starting with differently. So what verse are you appealing to Genesis 25 as why the saints go to heaven? You're muted, Tom.
I'm sorry there. Yeah, what I'm saying is that Abraham was gathered to his previous ancestors that lived. So these are already people that have been deceased and moved on from this world. And Abraham is being gathered to those ones who have already passed.
And all of those ones are in heaven. Is that right?
Well, yes, because and here's the one thing I want to mention too, that God doesn't make covenants with dead people. That his covenant, and this is why in Luke 20:38, he's called the God of the living, because he cannot make a covenant with a dead person. So yes, they are living with God. Luke 20:38 it makes that clear in other texts as well.
What do you mean by dead in this context? Do you mean just like covenantally dead, or do you mean bodily dead?
Bodily dead.
Yes, I certainly, yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't think, is there anyone that proposes that people make covenants with bodily dead people?
Well, yes, that's how the word, or the Old Testament defines dead as someone who is bodily dead.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay.
Yeah.
No, it's all right. We can move on from there. So was Ishmael righteous or wicked? And is that relevant in your view?
I haven't done too much research, but I do believe Ishmael was saved, because it does mention that he was, I think, part of the Abrahamic. I forget the part where him and Abraham because I think Abraham says that he was still part of the covenant. But I still think Abraham. I think Ishmael was saved. If that answers your question.
Do you think that Ishmael was part of the Abrahamic covenant?
Yeah.
Isn't he part of his own covenant because he has a completely different people from Abraham?
No, I don't think that. No, I don't believe there is an Ishmaelic covenant. I think Abraham was part of it, but then it came. The covenant also. So there's the Mosaic covenant and then the Abrahamic covenant. I think those are the two main general covenants. I don't think there's any other. Maybe you can show me a verse where it says that. I'd be interested.
No, well, I just think that, yeah. Anyway, I won't bother with my explanations there. But okay, so you believe that they go to heaven. Now, what verse is it you're appealing to that says you're just saying that because they're gathered together with their people, therefore they're in the presence of God?
Yes, and the fact that again that God doesn't make covenants, so they're alive in the spirit. They couldn't be, and they're not dead in the spirit. So, but you would say they're unconscious, and to me that doesn't make any sense. How, and to me
in
that
this
would
context,
yeah,
in this context, it's okay if they're conscious. Anyway,
yeah,
let's keep going. Let's keep going. So, okay, so you believe that, okay, gathered to them is a reference to those. So what about rested with their fathers? What does that phrase mean?
Well, sometimes it does mean that there was a grave that they would go to, a burial site, but with specific ones that I mentioned, that there was no grave, there was no tomb that was associated with them. But with some there is, like David, there was a tomb there, a burial site where he rested. I think it says in Acts 2:34, it kind of goes into that.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, is this not an analogous phrase as rested with his fathers, as gathered to his people?
No, those are differentiated. And I think it's, go ahead, I'm sorry.
By what are they differentiated?
Well, first of all, it's the process, the sequence of their post-mortem process. So, as in the case of Abraham and Ishmael, Moses and Aaron, it says, like, and I went through that it basically says that the dying happens before they gather to the one's relatives, and being gathered to one's relative occurs before the burial. So they gather to their relatives before the burial, and that's how it's differentiated in the sequence.
But if they're simply gathered to their relatives, I'm not sure what about that is supposed to communicate to me that they went to heaven.
Well, I mean, as I said, that God doesn't make covenants with dead people. So,
okay.
And I think
so you would agree.
Go ahead.
You would agree, though, right, that Ahab is not in heaven. Is that right?
Ahab, can you expound upon
King
that?
Ahab and Jezebel. Yeah, you remember King Ahab, Jezebel, Elijah, the whole prophets of Baal?
Well, I believe heaven, the third heaven, is a separation. There's a gulf, that there's a subdividing, a division, and Jesus called it the center of the earth, and he descended down to it. And 1 Peter 3:18-19 talks about he went to all the way back to the beginning of Noah, to all those people that were imprisoned there. So I think that, yes, the third heaven is encapsulated by two sides, the believing side and the unbelieving side, or the unredeemed side and the redeemed side.
So in your view, you believe that heaven is in the center of the earth?
It's described that, or it could be an idiom. I don't know if it's literally in the center of the earth, but that's what Jesus uses, that terminology. I think it's used to indicate, like, the nature of the center of the earth. Maybe he knew that people knew one day that there would be magma. It's going to be really hot in the center of the earth.
Adam, was your question heaven or hell to praise just now?
Heaven.
Yeah, to praise. It sounds like you're answering.
I thought he was answering it. Yeah. Oh, just making sure.
He's asking
Yeah.
you if heaven's in this, or maybe I'm mishearing. It sounded like praise was.
I think I
answering
asked it
similar-
correctly, and I think he's answering it correctly. His view is that heaven is in the center of the earth, Donnie, is my understanding.
Well, no, I don't. It's never called the center of the earth. I just think it's the same realm where God exists, but the bad side is called the center of the earth. I don't know why, but that's what the biblical authors described it as. I would say the heaven is described as paradise. So paradise and the center of the earth are different locations, or different categories of where people are separated.
Is this the same place where God's throne and the angels reside?
Yes. It's in the same,
Okay.
I wouldn't say in the exact same place, but it's in the realm. It's in the if you want to use dimension, you can use dimension. But dimension, remember where God is pretty big. So, I don't know the spatial distinctions, but I do think there is a distinction nonetheless.
So how is this possible if Jesus says 43 days later, right, that he had not ascended to the throne of the Father, the right hand of the Father?
Yeah, so his spirit was in the center of the earth, or where what they call where Peter talks about the prison. He went down to Sheol and he freed those who have not heard. They were slaves basically, because they couldn't be redeemed until he resurrected. So he went down there to preach, and he freed many. I think 1 Peter 4:6 kind of makes that clear.
Who was freed if the saints were already in heaven?
The ones who didn't get a chance to believe and get redeemed, the unredeemed.
Okay, so in your view, you believe in postpartum salvation.
Can you elucidate that? What do you mean by that?
You believe that people were getting saved after they had died.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. See, I think that which seems like we just have very different views on many of these levels. But so you're saying that, yeah, Jesus went down there to save people. All right. So, and then in your view, you do not believe, therefore, that the ones that he went to speak to were angels. Is that right?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
No. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Let's see here. Yeah, you have a very different view. So therefore, yeah, Jesus ascends to the right hand of the Father, but you would say that these are not different places. It's just the same place.
Yeah, or different location. You can call. I hate to say the word location, because that kind of gives like an Earth. We have like a geography to the Earth, and there's different locations. I don't know if that's the same as in the realm where God resides, but I will say there's I would say two different categories that he went to. I think one, we'll just call it side, if you want to call it a side, because Abraham used that there's a separation, a dividing. And yeah, so he went to one side and to the other side.
So are you saying that heaven could be a place that doesn't have God's presence?
I mean, that's a tough question, because God is omnipresent. I don't know if God chooses not to be there, but God can be there. So maybe God chooses not to have his presence where the unredeemed are. And I don't know what happens with that. I'm not saying that, see, we got to be careful, because if we're limiting God, then he can't be present there or something. I think he can be present, but maybe he chooses not to be present. Hopefully that answers your question.
Would you say, therefore, that God's presence is not important to listing what heaven is?
Well, I think God's presence to believers is the most important thing. So that's a very, subjective question. For, I don't know if, like, are you expecting like a biblical answer for that, or just like a personal my personal opinion on that. I think it's a hard
Of
one
course,
for
I'm looking
me.
for the Bible. The Bible is what we're here to debate.
Yeah, so I mean, if you want a verse that it would I might answer your question, is Psalms 139, where it says, David says, if I make my bed in Sheol, which would be a type of hell, I don't think it's the lake of fire. I think there's distinctions. There's Sheol, Hades, and then there's the Gehenna, and I think that is the lake of fire. So David said, if I make my bed in Sheol, you'll be there. So maybe God is, it looks like he's not confined to one area, or, to only the believer side.
So would you say that both the righteous and the wicked go to Sheol?
Yes.
Okay. And would you say that there is both reward and punishment in Sheol?
Yes, preliminarily, yes and no. So that the final punishment for the unbelieving side, or the non-redeemed, will be the lake of fire. That has yet to happen. But the punishment is they're going to be in torment. And I do think that God may, because the reason why they're in torment is because maybe that they don't have the presence of God. Maybe he chooses not to be with some people. I don't know. This is a hard question to answer biblically, but it does seem to me that David, he said, if I make my bed in Sheol, you'll be there. So, maybe people like David, maybe David was in Sheol at one time. I don't know.
Okay. Can you point to any verses that speak of the first judgment for the intermediate state, so that those can be rewarded and some can be punished during this phase?
Well, I mean, Hebrews 9, I think that I mentioned that after is appointed men for once to die, then the judgment. I would say that judgment is a separation or dividing of where they go, where their destination is going to be.
But why don't you think that judgment isn't the same judgment as the final one when Christ returns?
Well, because there are two different judgments that we know. There's a judgment for believers, the Bema seat, and that precedes the unbelievers, which the unbelievers have the great white throne of judgment. So there's not one judgment. So this judgment, if it's individualized or solitary or isolated, it has to be distinct from the other two judgments. So that's why generally, scholars do commentate, and they say this is the judgment where either you're going to the redeemed side, Abraham's bosom, or you're going to the other side where the rich man was in torment.
So when it says, right, and the angels will gather them together, right, and they will be resurrected, and some will be rewarded to eternal life and some to eternal damnation, isn't that a judgment for both the righteous and the wicked at the same time?
Yeah, it starts preliminary. So the judgment from our perspective is temporary, but it has eternal consequences. So it plays out in eternity eventually, but the judgment begins with the separation, though. Once you go to Hades, I would say Hades or Sheol, you are destined to go to the lake of fire, except for the ones before Jesus came. Then Jesus redeemed those ones because they didn't get a chance to believe.
And where do you feel like this separation in Sheol is taught? Besides Luke, is there an Old Testament passage that you would refer to this separation, or is it primarily Lazarus and the rich man?
Well, also 1 Peter 3, I think that's a good place. 18 through 19. Yeah, I don't, in the Old Testament, I don't think there's an explicit place where there's two different sides. I don't see that. And remember, I do believe in progressive revelation too. I don't think that God just dumps his revelation on people. So I do think, eventually God did reveal this to people, what was going on, just like the Trinity. I think there was certain things about the Trinity that were revealed in the New Testament rather than the Old Testament.
Do you believe that the story of Lazarus and the rich man is a real story, or do you hold it as a parable?
I do believe it is a real story, because in parables, they use fake people's names. They use real people's names. I think that is a hallmark of a true historical reality.
All right. And so you believe that then the parable or story of Lazarus and the rich man, forgive me for using parable if that's not your view, so I don't mean to impose that on you, but you believe that that is literal, and therefore this is where we should derive part of our doctrine about the intermediate state. Is that right?
Yes, because it is progressive, and even if it's minor, if it seems minor, it's still significant. I do think that piece of revelation is a staple point of the intermediate state, how the nature of the intermediate state, and it's taught by Jesus directly. So I think that it is absolutely essential.
Can you give me a verse that gives the distinction of our souls going to heaven, but our bodies going to the grave?
Let me think here. I do think there are a few. Yes. Let's think. I mean, I'm trying to top of my head that, let's see here. Ooh, that's like on the top of my head. Luke, maybe, I mean, so if I use Jesus as an example, would that not work sufficiently, or are you looking someone else outside of?
Yeah, I mean, I am looking for someone else because I think that Jesus is in a completely different category than everyone else. Jesus sits at the right hand of the Father. I would not say the same thing about the rest of the righteous or wicked.
I mean, Jesus was a true human being. He was, in every way that we're human, he is human as well. So yeah, with the spiritual things, I would agree that maybe like his divinity, his sovereignty, but as far as the things that make him human in common with us, I do think apply. I think we should look at him as an example of how it applies to us as well. I don't see how he would be some exception different than us as far as our nature and the things that make us human and in his humanity. Would you agree? I'm sorry,
you would agree that
Adam,
Jesus is resurrected from the dead and lives bodily, right?
Well, I believe that before he was resurrected into his body, he was spiritually in Sheol or Hades. He was there communicating with the past, like the past people that departed in the other life, in their past life, and they've already departed. Yeah,
gentlemen, that's 20 minutes. That's our first 20 minutes. And so we're now going to transition into a second 20-minute cross exam. Praise I am. You get to lead the way now in cross examination. I'll start the timer on your first question. Go ahead.
Appreciate that. So in second Corinthians 5, it mentions, or Paul mentions, that to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. Now, he did say, I'm going to make this quick disclaimer and ask you the question, that he did say he would rather be with the Lord, but that's talking about his physical existence. He would rather be out of this world and in the world where Jesus is, because he was going through hardships and etc. So my question, what does it mean to be present with the Lord?
I think that Paul is speaking of the resurrection. He is focused on talking about the resurrection. And I think it is, just like I highlighted during my rebuttal, that yes, he is talking about, I would rather be with the Lord, be home with the Lord. Therefore, we also have as our ambition, whether at home or absent, to be pleasing to him. And so he's talking about our service as believers so that we would be worthy, for exactly verse 10, for we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ. It seems very strange to me that if he's not talking about working hard to be worthy of everything, that he immediately mentions the judgment seat of Christ, which accompanies the resurrection.
Can you show me in anything in 2 Corinthians 5 where it indicates a resurrection?
Yeah, I think that that's what he's referring to in the first few verses when he is talking about our earthly tent, but we have a building from God. Now, it seems that we simply disagree on this because I do believe that what is being referenced is the eternal house that is meant for us. As Paul says here, for we know that our earthly tent is torn down, our house and is torn down. But we have a building from God, not made by hands, eternal in the heavens. For indeed, in this tent we groan, longing to be clothed. We long to be clothed with our eternal dwelling, which is our resurrected bodies.
Now, does that seem to indicate a location rather than a body? It says eternal in the heavens. That seems to be a location, not talking about something like a body. So
see, this is the part where I would disagree, because I think that it is our immortal bodies that come from heaven. As is mentioned in other verses, our reward is in heaven. And this is the promise of our reward that will come down for us, because we do not have our resurrected bodies. It is not the anticipation of an earthly dwelling in heaven. Rather, it is the anticipation of our resurrected bodies in which we shall dwell. That's why he is contrasting our earthly tent, which is this body. He is not contrasting the planet Earth with the planet heaven or something like this. I think this is very resonant with 1 Corinthians 15. And Paul is explaining taking off the mortal and putting on the immortal.
So you're saying that a building of God is talking about a spiritual body in the future?
Yes, because we are the temple of God. I am the temple of the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit dwells in me.
In John 14, I think verse 2, it says that God has prepared us a place, a resting place, or mansions. Do you think that could apply here in 2 Corinthians 5:1?
Yeah, but again, actually, number one, mansions is a poor translation of John 14. It is talking about spaces or places. I actually had a great interview on my channel that people can check out with Dr. Robinson, where she explains that mansions is a terrible translation, and it is not referring to receiving heavenly mansions, but it is talking about the places that God prepares, and those places are us.
In other places, it talks about the building of God as the tabernacle. So in Hebrews is a specific place where it's the earthly tabernacle was a representation of the heavenly tabernacle. And why wouldn't that, or do you see, I mean, so I guess my question is, isn't that more consistent than a spiritual body?
I don't see why. To me, this only seems consistent if you don't believe that our bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit. And I think it's completely relevant that the one who said this is Paul. Paul is the one who says that our bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit. And that's the whole point of tearing down the tabernacle, is that we no longer have to go to a physical location to worship God and to have his presence come and dwell, but rather his presence dwells in us.
Well, I would agree that, we are the temple of God, but it's figurative. This seems to be not figurative, and it seems to be talking about the heavenly tabernacle, but I guess that's just a disagreement on hermeneutics there. I want to kind of move on to the next question. And let's see. So when Jesus said what does it mean when he said a spirit hath not flesh and bones? And what is that in reference to? In Luke 24:39.
Yeah. So usually it's translated as spirit or ghost. And so he is just making the claim that, hey guys, guess what? I'm not a ghost, but I have been bodily resurrected. And that's why he wants them to come and touch his body and then to realize. And I think this is a great hope of the resurrection. He has been bodily resurrected. Therefore, they can all expect the same thing.
And I guess where I'm going with this, yeah, I mean, that's fine. You can translate it as ghost, but do ghosts, apparitions, and angels, do they sleep?
Do they sleep?
Yes.
I don't know. I don't see anything about that in the Bible. So
does God sleep?
No, I don't think so. Except for Jesus when he was alive on earth and in the boat.
Right.
Apparently boats made him tired.
Yeah, and he had humanity just like us, I would agree. So anything, let's say and even in Hebrews, it says that we are ministers or angels of fire. It calls us ministers of fire, but we are called spirits. So I guess where my question is, what would be if we are a spirit, if there's something that you agree that you're a dualist. So why would one or what we call one category of spirits sleep and then the others don't? To me, that's inconsistent. Can you harmonize that?
So to me, again, so like you're bringing up notions about consciousness. Now, to be clear, I know this is hedged under the realms of soul sleep for this debate, but I don't see anything in scripture where the Bible is entirely clear, rather people are conscious or unconscious during the intermediate state or however that parses itself out. And so again, the major theme of tonight's debate is, do believers go to heaven? And rather they are in soul sleep or they are just in some sort of conscious intermediate state, such as Sheol itself. Sheol to me is not heaven. Sheol and heaven are different things. And I suppose it's up to you. If you want to say that Sheol is heaven, then we just have a very different disagreement. But concerning sleep, I guess I wonder to you, when we sleep on earth, does your soul sleep, or are you completely conscious the entire time? Because to me, it doesn't seem like your spirit or soul is conscious during sleep on earth. So I'm not really sure what it means for your body to be sleeping, but your spirit to be completely awake.
Well, it's definitely active. And I think that's still maybe not, I think there's different consciousnesses, but it's still conscience. And I think that does play into it, but I don't want to get distracted here, because I did want to press you on Revelation 6 and one thing that you said that I think if I'm trying to recall what you said again, that you believe that they could be sleeping there. So in Revelation, let's talk about let's see here, it's 6, I think it's Revelation 6, where it says the saints, or the bodies of the beheaded saints, that John's seen those that were martyred. And so are you saying that they're unconscious there? Could you clarify that?
Yeah. So this is actually, I think, a great verse in support of my view. So thank you for bringing it up, Tom. It says, right, Revelation 6, 9 through 11. And I'm going to skip through to verse 10. How long, O Master, holy and true, will you not judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth? And a right robe was given to each of them, and it was told to them that they should rest for a little while longer, until the number of their fellow slaves and brothers who were killed, even as they had been, would also be completed. So in this depiction of John, this vision of John, the angel tells them, go back to sleep, guys. So I don't know why this would be an example of them maintaining their consciousness in heaven after the angel tells them, go back to sleep. Very similar to all of the Old Testament passages that I quoted.
Yeah, and I would say that there's different understandings of rest. Like in Hebrews 4, the rest is God himself that we are in redemptive rest. I think that's how it's been used. And when God rested on the seventh day, we're not saying that God was sleeping on the seventh day. So I think that resting has a completely different meaning biblically. I don't think people go to sleep like humans do. It's a human, specifically to humans. But I kind of want to return back to that text, though.
Yeah.
So,
well, can I just address that for half a second, if you don't mind,
sure.
Tom?
Yeah, go ahead.
But I think this is very resonant with all of the Old Testament passages where it says, and Ahab rested with his fathers, and Jehoaz rested with his fathers, and Joash rested with his fathers, Jeroboam rested with his fathers. So to me, I'm just saying that it seems it's using the same language there.
Right. And I wouldn't even disagree. I think there's a body element where they were buried. Their bodies are buried, but they are gathered still to their kin, their families in heaven. But, going back to Revelation 6, so let's just, okay, so that, we have a dispute on the word rest. Let's just assume that it is what we mean, like it's resting in the Lord. Just keep resting, be patient with the Lord, because he will soon avenge you. So taking that view, would that be consistent with what Jesus said in Luke, where the elect cry day and night, daily, for God to avenge them? And for them, I guess here's my point: the day and night, I guess that adage or that phraseology, day and night, it seems to be constant mental activity, consciousness. There is no place to sleep. And how would you respond to that?
Yeah, so you actually brought it up in your presentation. I think that these are all images and euphemisms of Abel's blood crying out from the ground. I don't think that they're meant to be taken literal at all. And in fact, that all that's going on here is that it's an example that, you know what? Abel's blood cries out from the ground day and night. That's the idea. It's the very same notion that the blood of the martyrs cries out for justice, and it will constantly cry out for justice. And this is the angel, which goes along with the theme of Revelation, that God will avenge. He will take care of all of the martyrs. They shouldn't worry, because the day of judgment will come and they will be avenged.
And would you say this is a non-literal figurative statement in Revelation 20:10? It says that the devil that deceived them was cast in the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and false prophet are, and should be tormented day and night forever and ever. Is that also figurative?
Yeah, so this gets into stuff far beyond this debate. I just debated Revelation 20 with Phelan last week, but in essence, so what it's talking about, yes, the vast majority of Revelation, it's images. John is seeing images and then he interprets them, right? And so the devil is cast into the lake of fire, will burn, day and night forever and ever, and they'll be tormented day and night forever and ever. This is the second death. This is the second death, is the telling of what the images mean. Just like Daniel is talking about, and there were 7 lean cows, and these 7 lean cows are 7 years of famine.
So so if they're not, so are you saying they're not conscious? Like, to me, this denotes conscious activity, that it's ongoing. It's endless. It doesn't stop. So what are you implying that so what is your interpretation of that? It replaces I think the most sound reasoning is that it's conscious torment over and over and over forever. And the reason why I'm doing that is because they cry out day and night. Jesus uses that same thing for the martyrs, that same statement, and it doesn't make any sense to make it non-literal. Well, so what does it mean then? What is it actually trying to convey then?
Yeah, I think it's funny to me, I guess, that you find it so literal, because it seems like composed of martyrs crying day and night, and this is their enjoyable experience in heaven. So I don't see why that would have to be literal. And again, because John is using imagery from Genesis 3 and 4. And it seems obvious to me, is Abel's blood literally crying out? No, it's not. Why should I think that the saint's blood is literal? And then when you go to Revelation 20, all of these things, they're images, they're pictures, and then they're interpreted. The reason that I don't take them
Go ahead, sorry.
the reason I don't take them literally is because John gives the interpretation of what the vision means.
Well, that wasn't really my argument. I'm not arguing if it's hyper literal or not, but I'm arguing is conscious activity. Does that statement indicate conscious activity, yes or no?
No. Because to me, it seems like that's the part where I'm confused, because I felt like that I was addressing that. So does it indicate conscious activity? Well, if it's an image, why would it indicate conscious activity?
Well, because
that's the part I got lost on.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you sleep and cry out to God?
Do you believe blood? I don't believe that Abel's blood literally cried out for justice.
But that's a whole secondary. Okay, we're going to stick with Revelation here. Let's forget about what happened in Genesis. That's a side point. What I'm asking is the phrase crying out day and night, that is a conscious activity. It denotes that, because people that sleep do not cry out. Do you agree with that? And why wouldn't you agree with that?
People crying out again. So like, okay, I see that we're struggling here in this one, because to me, it's an image. It's an image. It's not literally crying out. It's an image of people crying out. Is that any clearer or no?
But day and night. So what are they crying? What is the image of that if they do it day and night? Which we don't even have to take it hyper literal. We can say it's hyperbolic, but what is
hyperbolic?
Yeah. But there's still conscious activity though. Like, would you agree that it still entails conscious activity?
That goes on forever? No. I don't agree that it's conscious activity that goes on forever.
No, we'll even take it hyperbolic, but you think they're sleeping there. Well,
so even if you want to talk about this part, to me, yeah, this is a part of the final judgment. If you're just talking about like, oh, do people in the final judgment undergo conscious torment and conscious bliss and pleasure? Yes, I agree with that. But I'm here debating the intermediate state. I'm not here debating the final judgment.
Well, Revelation 6 lays out the seals. This is not the final judgment. This is even before the final judgment.
So Revelation 6, yeah, I thought you were talking about Revelation 20. Revelation 6.
I'm using them, tandem, coupled together because of that phrase, day and night. It denotes conscious activity, and that's the point. And it seems to me like you're struggling with that. I haven't really heard a good counter to that.
Because it's an image. There is nobody conscious. The fact that martyrs are used as representations does not denote that they are literally under the altar. I mean, I don't think that they are literally just hiding under the altar for all of the time until Christ returns.
Well, in Luke 18:7-8, it says that the chosen ones cry out to God day and night to be avenged. This is an allusion to Revelation. How could these not be connected?
See, I wonder, how can they not be connected to Genesis, talking about the blood of Abel? Abel's blood cries out from the ground, and those are exactly analogous to what's going on here.
Well, I would agree that Abel is a martyr, and he is crying out to God to be avenged. So,
one last question, praise.
So let's just say that if there's saints on earth, would you agree that if God's going to come and help the saints on earth, would you agree that's deliverance and not avenge?
Sure. Saints on earth.
Glad you see that distinction. So I do think it's, to me, I connected Luke 18:7-8 with Revelation 6, that these same ones are crying day and night, and it includes conscious activity. I don't see you can get around that if you try to make it non-literal or something. And I guess you have to say like it's going to something like Abel's blood, but even then we could still take the same way literal there too. That okay, but here's my last question: do you think Abel's a martyr?
Yes.
Gentlemen,
Okay.
we can continue those thoughts for sure. That is roughly 40 minutes of strict cross exam. Excellent discussion so far. Appreciate the back and forth and the banter. And so now we're going to transition into a final roughly 15 to 20 minutes, but we're going to keep it more free flowing. So rather than a strict cross exam, gentlemen, feel free to discuss the topic at hand, being soul sleep. Praise just ended with his 20-minute cross exam. Therefore, Adam, let's allow you to pick the first topic or kick us off basically in a free flowing format. Go ahead.
Sure. I mean, it's, to me, honestly, I feel like you just have a significantly different of heaven than I do, and that the majority do. I am curious, are there any particular scholars that you follow that hold this view that the ancient saints were in heaven prior to the New Testament?
Yeah, Bruce Wilkie is one of them. There's several Old Testament scholars that I know. Wilkie's one of them. Christopher Wright's another one, and there's a third one. I can't think of his name right now, but there's also New Testament scholars that also hold to this view as well. What's his name now? I have to think about these other names right now, but yeah, there's a few. Yes.
Okay, so let's just imagine that Lazarus and the rich man didn't exist. Would you still have the view that you have?
Yes, I would. And I do think that, the word Sheol makes that clear, that there is a place where the wicked and the saved people go. Absolutely.
So where are you getting the idea that there are two compartments from the word Sheol? And I agree that it is a broad term, but I largely think that it just means grave or death.
Well, yeah, I do. Well, I would say it was just Sheol. Like, I mean, I don't know if, if you're going to call it, like, we have different distinctions like Hades but I mean, the Old Testament, they knew that God it says that his anger burned us to the lowest parts of Sheol. So his anger there would be, I would say, is distinct from the ones who would be in Sheol, his believers. So believers would go to Sheol as well, and also unbelievers, but there's compartments to it. I think there's divisions to it. I think that's probably why I would, even if Luke 16 wasn't there. Yeah.
And one of those compartments is heaven.
Yes. There's different tiers. Yes.
Yeah. So that's the part where I'm struggling to see where you're getting this idea that they're going to heaven, or that heaven is part of Sheol, because I'm missing that. I don't see this idea that Sheol is part of heaven in the Old Testament.
Well, and when you say heaven, what do you mean by that?
See, I do mean the presence of God. It is the place where God dwells. It is where his throne is.
Well, when
it's where
say
he
heaven,
comes and makes his presence known.
Okay. What I mean is the third heaven. Is that what you mean too when you say heaven, the third heaven?
Yes. And also, you know what? I forgot to address that one. Where are you getting this idea that Paul met somebody else in the third heaven? To me, it seems fairly clear that the one that he's referencing in Corinthians, that he was caught up to the third heaven, is simply himself. I knew a man who was caught up to the third heaven. It's clearly Paul. It's not that he's meeting somebody else that he doesn't know.
It says Paul saw a man he had known, so he'd known himself for 14 years. That makes no sense.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what he's saying. He's speaking in the third person.
Yeah.
So is your view that he saw somebody else and that person told him what they saw in the third heaven?
No, what I'm saying is he went to that realm, the third heaven, and he saw someone he had known 14 years, but that doesn't mean he talked with them and had a conversation. He's just mentioning something that he remembered, that So they have some type of facial distinction or something that he recognized. That's all it's saying. I mean, do you have any commentaries that would say that, by the way? Like if it's like his talking in third person? Because I've never seen a commentary that mentioned that. Maybe you could recommend some. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll definitely have to send you some commentaries and stuff. So after the debate, because to me, that's actually the view that I've grown up with. And to me, I thought this was much more the mainstream view, not a fringe view. I've actually never heard the view that you're proposing.
That is interesting, because that's the very first time I've ever heard that. So I appreciate that.
All right. We'll learn together on that.
Is this so? Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, this is open discussion, so feel free to jump in, Tom.
Okay. I don't know if it was like you're open, like you're okay. So, if so, you agree that there are spirits that are in heaven after they die here, but are you okay? So what you're not agreeing with that, or let me put it this way: so they move on into another existence beyond this world,
into Sheol.
Okay, so Sheol.
Mm-hmm. I just don't think Sheol is heaven, nor does it a compartment of heaven. It seems to be your view.
Right. So what makes Sheol distinct from the third heaven?
God's presence and the realm of the angels. I do not think that the angels nor God dwell or live in Sheol.
So what did it mean?
Nor do I think Christ's throne is there.
Yeah, and so David said that if I make my bed in hell, to me, it says you are there. What if God is there with David, why wouldn't he be there with other people?
So I think that David is really just making a poetic type of statement. And this is actually not really any difference than I would do with, my wife or something, hey baby, I'm with you, even though you're going to the supermarket or something. People say this stuff all of the time. Like I've been around soldiers and military most of my life, and it's always, I'm with you. No matter where you go, I'm with you. I really don't see any reason to suspect that this is much more than that, especially since it's in the book of Psalms, which is about song and poetry. And so I don't see a big ontological statement being made here. It's the idea that God is always with him, no matter what, and he sees him wherever he is. But that doesn't have to be some sort of ontological physical presence.
Well, we can. I'll even accept that. So David's he's still explaining or expressing something that denotes something like a realm or some type of place where it's not good.
But so I actually find that to be a problem for your position. David says, "You will not abandon me to Sheol." So if Sheol is simply heaven for him, why would God abandon him in Sheol? Well, why is that a bad thing? That seems like a bad thing.
Well, remember after he killed, so he was involved in some pretty heinous things. Like he did cause someone else to die in battle, and he also took that guy's wife, and laid with her. And God seen that, and in fact, it was so bad that God, I don't think he actively killed the baby, but I think he allowed the baby to die of natural causes, where God would normally stand in and protect babies physically. But part of the punishment was the death of his baby, and it was basically the after effects of his sin. So his sin caused that, but that's why maybe he's being truthful here, because after that happened, maybe, he felt like he would be there. But I think that's where it goes into part of his punishment, maybe. But also, he did say also to Yahweh that, it says to reinstate my relationship with you salvifically. He didn't say to save me again, but he said the joy of salvation. So I think that was what he was trying to basically express. But it's still, he knew. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Isn't he looking for God to save him out of Sheol?
Or rescue him. Yes, I think there's a deliverance. And I think that he believed that he was probably going there because of some of his misdeeds that he did. Yahweh didn't say, oh, because I'm eternal security, but Yahweh didn't come in and say, you're still saved, David, don't worry about it. Rather, I think God allowed him to stew in his sin a little bit as some type of consequence or punishment to him, or correction, so that he would live some of the consequences of his sin. But he still understood, though. I think here's the point. He still understood Sheol, what it denotes. It denotes a place of punishment. It denotes a place of torment. It denotes a place where people do not want to go.
Sheol does. I thought you said Sheol is where heaven is.
Well, there's two sides, and there's compartments to it. So there's a separation, a divide, a chasm. So you can say that the lower parts might be the left side. I don't know how it works out in geographically in like a spiritual realm, but Luke describes it as a chasm or a separation where the good are in one place and the others are in another place.
Yes, in Luke. In the Old Testament, where can I learn about this chasm between and the two sides of Sheol? Where do I learn about this in the Old Testament?
Well, I think that's demanding too much, because again, I do believe God progressively reveals things to people. I don't think he just dumps it all on people.
But you believe that heaven is where the Old Testament saints go. And you're basically just saying that you believe that because of the New Testament, but not the Old?
Well, there's when you call it, like, you can say that there's precursors, there's little flashes, snapshots of Luke 16, but it's not like in depth and explained as Luke 16. So there's increments. You can say there's increments of it, but it's not fully divulged like it is in Luke 16.
All right, let's talk about Luke 16 then, because
Sure.
I think this is an important one. And I think that it's just a parable and doesn't have anything to do with like some sort of physical reality. And okay, well, why would I say that or propose that? Because yes, everyone brings up this idea of naming, right? Lazarus is named, but the rich man's not. Right? Is that one of your arguments?
Yeah,
or I don't want to mischaracterize you.
Yeah, that's one point, but I want to get to another point too. But one point is that parables do not use authentic names, true, genuine names. No.
Yes. So in this instance, I feel like if that is the view, it is because you misunderstand what the parable is saying. The parable of Lazarus and the rich man is the point that Lazarus is named. So the whole point of it is that he says, about Abraham at the end, right? He's like, oh, send back, Abraham. And Abraham's like, no. They have Moses and the prophets and all of this, right? And the whole point is that when you follow the rest of the other verses in the Bible, it is the notion that, hey, God, he says in Matthew 25, right? Truly I say to you, you I don't know. And the many other verses. So when you're talking about there, it is talking about the naming, like Exodus 33. I will also do this thing for which you have spoken, for you have found favor in my sight, and I have known you by name. And then Jesus says in John as well, right? My sheep hear my voice and know me because I have called them by name. Over and over, the New Testament talks about those who are called by name. You will be called by God because your name is written in the Lamb's book of life. The whole point is the rich man is forgotten. He is unknown, but Lazarus is known by name. That is the point of the parable.
I think there's more important features. I mean, that's just a side point. We can have a discussion over that, but I think the more important part is the idea of the Abraham's bosom. Did you know that is in the Talmud? The Jews believed in a real place called Abraham's bosom, a physical place that was an actual reality. And so Jesus, if you actually read the beginning of Luke 16, he's basically using their own Talmud against him. He says, in your law and all these things in their Orthodox teaching. So he actually cites a writing of their own writings. And this is actually, I'll give you citations on this. Numerous papers are written on this, where Abraham's bosom, you can check it out yourself in the Talmud.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah. In the Talmud, Abraham's bosom is a real reality. The Jews believed in that. So,
and they believed that it was heaven?
Yes, that is a place where the unredeemed go. That it was a punishment. Yes, there was a punishment place where they were the opposite of Abraham's bosom. Of course, Abraham's bosom is where the redeemed go. Or Abraham, Isaac, and also some of the other ones out there. All the patriarchs. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and they would call that heaven, the place where God's throne is and the angels are.
Paradise. Yes. They believe in something called paradise. So how do you understand paradise? Are you thinking that's not heaven? And what's the differentiation?
Paradise, I do think is heaven. So I don't make that. I just don't think that, what's being referred to is a literal place where there is a place of rewarding for the righteous and a place of punishment for the wicked. And you mentioned in one of your rebuttals that, there are tons of other judgments. And of course, I agree with judgments over nations and all those things. But what we're referring to are eschatological judgments, the judgments for eternal life, for eternal damnation. And do you believe that there is scriptural evidence for that? Or you find some sort of intermediate judgment?
Yeah, there's an intermediate judgment that you can say it kind of sets the pace, or what I'm trying to say. It kind of sets the tone for the eschaton, is that there is an intermediate judgment. If you die before Jesus returns, you're going to go to two places. There's going to be a separation there. And, basically the rich man and Lazarus is a really great example of that.
Yes, I keep hearing about the rich man and Lazarus. Are there any Old Testament references to this idea of intermediate judgment? Or other New Testament ones outside of Lazarus and the rich man?
I think there's flashes of it. I don't think that, again, there's little parts and pieces, but the New Testament actually encapsulates it and puts it all together and meshes it and molds it into like a full explanation. So I can give you different parts where it could lead that way, but it's not like explicit, if that makes sense.
You know what, gentlemen? That's about 16 and a half minutes. Why don't we wrap it up there? We went about a minute each over on the cross exam, so we're pretty close to about a 60-minute discussion, and I would say it was a comprehensive discussion. I would argue is balanced. I found myself very engaged in the discussion, and I found myself agreeing with certain points from both of your models on this and disagreeing. So I think there was a good kind of back and forth there in that sense. And what we can do now is move into closing statements, which could be a good place to wrap up our thoughts, wrap up our points. Since there was a lot discussed and a lot of the discussion was fast paced, this will be a good time to address anything we may feel has been left hanging and do our best to solidify our cases tonight, for the audience, to give them the best representation of each other's position. So it's been a great debate, lively live chat tonight as well. And okay, Praise. Since Adam's in the affirmative, he gets the last word. So Praise, you're going to get the first 5 minutes for a closing statement, which means to the audience, you have exactly 10 minutes to send in your last minute questions and challenges for our guests tonight. Praise Am, whenever you're ready, we will give you the floor for a 5-minute closing statement. Go ahead.
Appreciate it, Donnie, and it's always a blessing and I've really enjoyed talking with Adam tonight. It was a pleasure. And basically, I just want to reiterate that this sleeping idea of unconsciousness, I don't think it was definitely not in the church fathers, with the earliest believers that succeeded Paul and the apostles. They didn't believe in this stuff. I'm not saying that proves this idea of intermediate state, but I think it does. I think it's an eyebrow raiser, at least, that the churches, the beginning believers, did not adhere to soul sleep. But Adam is a different breed, though. Tonight with me, he's a different dynamic, because usually when I talk to soul sleepers, they're physicalists. They believe that there's a physical annihilation of consciousness, a spirit. But Adam actually believes in something non-physical. So it's a lot harder to address some of his points. And it was a good challenge tonight. And I appreciate some of his points, but I do think some of my points are irrefutable. And some of I brought up is in Ephesians 3:14. Families are currently in the third heaven. That really wasn't addressed, but maybe another time we could talk about that. But also that no one in heaven or under earth in Revelation 5:3, that implies that there's people in heaven and under the earth. So this shows you the dynamic I was talking about tonight. Just look at Revelation 5:3, my position. It's definitely validated, substantiated in Scripture. Ephesians 3:14, Revelation 5:3, that they're talking about all about one realm, but there's different compartments, categories, distinctions within that realm. And yes, it's a sophisticated viewpoint. It's not like this simple thing that is laid out simply. No, you have to articulate it and make distinctions, differentiations, and explain it. And I think that's the challenge. So, Adam looks like he believes that there's another place where they go, these souls or whatever, or spirits, that after the afterlife. There is an afterlife, but they're not living with God, which makes, if God is sovereign and he's a spirit, where the heck else are they going? It doesn't make any sense to me. I think his points or his view is unique, but I don't think it's consistent. I don't think it holds up to scrutiny as we showed tonight. And we talked, we went into the martyrs, and, I in Luke 18, I mentioned, basically they cry unto God day and night. And this is in Luke 18:7-8. Well, that crying out day and night is conscious activity. And this is connected to Revelation 20, in Revelation 6:9-10 as well, that the martyrs are waiting to be avenged. They're like, come on, God, let's go get them. And I don't think that was sufficiently addressed tonight at all. Abraham gathered to his father, or to his kin. That wasn't really addressed either. And about how there's the sequence of a post-mortem sequence. So dying happens before being gathered to one's relatives, and being gathered to one's relatives occurs before the burial. They're gathering to their relatives before the burial. And whatever you want to call it, they're going to another realm, another dimension of existence. So there is an afterlife, and I think even Adam conceded to that. He just doesn't think it's where God is. But there's definitely a place in an afterlife where they go. But maybe, I would like to have maybe look into his position, maybe have another discussion on this. But I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure here, an honor to be on SFT channel. With that, I'll end my time. Thank you so much.
The pleasure is all mine, gentlemen. Praise and Adam. Thanks for a great debate tonight on Soul Sleep. We need more of these, that's for sure. Adam, we're going to now hand it over to you for your 5-minute closing statement. Go ahead.
Yeah, again, Donnie, thanks for hosting another great debate. And yes, so I am not opening by saying that I'm not a dualist. I am a dualist. And sure, you can have immaterial souls go into the grave. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it makes much more sense of the consistency of human beings. So yes, that is not part of the discussion. I'm not a physicalist, but rather a dualist. So now he says, well, where are souls going? How does this all parse itself out? And he says this seems to be a problem for my view. Well, to me, it seems to be a much greater problem for his view, because the Old Testament teaches that they all go to the same place. And when I questioned him about, well, where are these different compartments shown? His example is simply like, well, they're kind of flashes here or there, but basically nothing solid. Again, this is the part where it seems to me like it is Tom who is reading into these texts then and saying like, well, there's got to be these different places. But I think this is showcased a lot more by, what David says in Psalm 16:10, for you will not abandon my soul to Sheol. You will not allow your Holy One to undergo decay. David is not saying like, hey, why would God abandon me in heaven with God? And Tom seems to suggest that, well, he's going to go to the bad place. How do I know that? Like, it just seems like he's reading his own views in here, and I cannot determine from the text itself that that's what David's concerned about, that he's going to go to the bad Sheol versus the good Sheol. But rather, it seems to me like David is crying out for resurrection. Lord, you will not leave me in the grave. This is the clear and consistent teaching of the Old Testament, is that of resurrection. And he says, well, I didn't address the part about souls being gathered to their fathers or ancestors. My point in addressing that is simply this. It's all of the old evil kings as well that rest with their fathers. But there is no distinction between good or bad. Oh, they died and then they rested with their fathers. Would we really say that the evil King Ahab went to the good part of Sheol? And I'm sure perhaps Tom would agree. No, he didn't go there. Cool, but by what distinction in any of the texts am I supposed to make that distinction? He says Abraham's gathered to his ancestors. Well, cool. So is Ahab. So are Jezebel. And you might just say it's like, well, these are bad people, so obviously they went to the bad place. Again, you're just reading into the text. I don't see anything in the text that says, and he went to the good part of Sheol and he went to the bad part of Sheol. One went to heaven and one went to the grave. It just says that all went to the grave. This is the teaching of the Old Testament, and this is the understanding of the New Testament believers. And yes, Tom is a strange bug who has suggested as well that yes, Jesus doesn't have anything to do with believers going to heaven. And I mean, hey, it's completely different presuppositions. Tom seems to believe that postpartum salvation occurs and that Jesus rescues people. I simply don't agree with that. This was not a part of our debate tonight. But in short, the passages referring to Jesus going and speaking to the spirits in prison are the fallen angels. It is not human believers or human spirits that he's referring to. We didn't nearly get to address Ephesians 4, but I think that that is also addressing those things. So with all of that said, to me, it seems very much like the teaching of going to heaven is actually a doctrine that I actually do think takes away from the important doctrine of the resurrection. The resurrection of the dead is the hope for all believers. If they were to tell you, don't worry, you're going to heaven, that would not necessarily be a comfort to the believers. And nowhere does Paul encourage and comfort people by going to heaven. Instead, he encourages them, do not be afraid, for we will see them at the last day upon the resurrection. That is when the great judgment takes place, the great white throne judgment, and all of the righteous and the wicked are judged. Tom has not seemed to give a very strong answer as well. What intermediate judgment is there? He simply asserts there is one. There is one because we have Lazarus and the rich man. But I tell you, there is only one judgment, one day of resurrection, one return of Christ, and that is where all of this will take place. Thank you.
Adam, thank you very much for that 5-minute closing statement. Gentlemen, that concludes our opening statements, 2 rebuttals, 1 of 10 and 1 of 5. a nearly 60-minute discussion broken up into two portions. We got the best of both worlds, free-flowing discussion and strict cross-exam. And we've now given our concluding statements. And so, gentlemen, I do appreciate the comprehensive debate on a very interesting topic tonight, soul sleep. And so, okay, let's engage some of these audience questions. We've had a lot of interaction in the chat. I myself was even guilty a time or two of engaging in some live chat debate, which is unusual for me. So forgive me. Adam and Praise, you guys chose a fun topic that generates some passionate discussion.
You're having too much fun, Donnie. You're having too much fun.
Too much fun. I live for debates. Living the dream then. So, okay, guys, let's have some fun with these questions. Further continue the fun. So Praise and Adam, let's see what we got here from our audience. Study is key question. Not really specifying who it's to, so we'll work through it together and see if we can figure that out. How can 2 Corinthians 5 be interpreted as Paul wishing for his spirit to shed his body in death to go be with the Lord, when in verse 4 he says that he wishes not to be unclothed, but further clothed? I feel like it's for Praise. So Praise, let's start with you.
He says that he wishes to be unclothed. Yeah, he wishes not to be unclothed. I don't see that in the text. Let me pull it up really quick. Just give me a quick glance at it. But basically,
verse 4.
Verse 4,
Sorry.
okay. Yeah, clothed with his righteousness. So, I mean, even Luke 22, I believe Luke 22, it talks, and also Isaiah, that we're clothed with his righteousness. And that's the only clothing that that's important in the afterlife, is that clothing. I don't think like this is some type of body or suit, like some type of meat suit or something, like a spiritual body suit. And I think that is what the clothing means. But if you look at Acts 7 with Stephen cries out to Jesus, "Receive my spirit." He knew that shedding his flesh body, his fleshly tabernacle, would result in his spirit being received by Jesus. That's another one we could have went into tonight, but unfortunately we only had a 15-minute opener. But that's a whole nother one that shows the immortality of the soul. Receive my spirit. And I'll just leave it there with Stephen. Go ahead.
Thank you, Praise. Adam, floor is yours.
Yeah, no, he's talking about our resurrection bodies. He longs not to be clothed, but to be clothed with our new bodies. It's clear that that's the contrast, because the tent that we groan in is our physical bodies. And so he longs with our dwelling from heaven. And I think this is further fleshed out by Paul in 1 Corinthians 15, when we will shed the mortal and put on the immortal. We will be clothed with our resurrection bodies unto immortality. That is the primary point that Paul is trying to make. And again, when you read all the way down from verse 1 to verse 10, he brings it back down to the judgment seat of Christ, which is to take place at the resurrection. And so Paul is speaking about judgment, resurrection, new bodies, shedding the old bodies.
Thank you, Adam. Praise, you get the last word. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think verse 1 needs to be delved out better by the soul sleepers. And I heard tonight that the house of God is a spiritual body. I mean, that's not how Hebrews talks about it. The house of God is a tabernacle, the spiritual tabernacle in heaven. And it's just like a representation on earth. There's an actual spiritual one there. So who's there? Just angels? That makes no sense. And even Adam agrees that there's a duality. So they're somewhere, these people, but apparently they're not where God is? I mean, to me, that's ridiculous, but I'll end it there.
Thank you. Okay, so that was for you, Praise. Here's one for you, Adam. Comes in from Joseph. Appreciate the question, Joseph. In light of Ecclesiastes 12, verse 2, with no resurrection, how do you explain verse 7?
Yeah, I have that memorized, I'm sure. Just kidding. Let me see. Hold on. I don't know which verse he's referencing.
Hey, you guys are supposed to have the entire Bible, Old Testament and New Testament.
Well, I could guess, but I don't want to guess.
For debaters on this channel. You got to have it all memorized.
The spirit returns back to God who gave it. That's what it's
okay. That's the one I thought he was talking about. So this is an interesting passage, and there's a couple different things about here. Number one, I very much think that Solomon is referring very metaphorically in a lot of this, because earlier he says the dead have no knowledge and they basically don't think or do anything. And so it's like, okay, which one do you take? Are they active and alive in heaven, or do they have no knowledge and no wisdom and no thought? And so it's also for debate. Some people have proposed that the spirit that's being referred to here is God's spirit, and it's not our souls or spirits at all. And so, yeah. And furthermore, this is a very interesting question he asked, because he says with no resurrection. So this says nothing about resurrection. Why does it say nothing about resurrection? Because the resurrection is, in virtually all cases, I'm not aware of any verse that speaks of a spiritual resurrection. The resurrection is the bodily resurrection of believers and the wicked. So there really isn't any mention of a resurrection here. But however you take it and stuff like that, there's no real resurrection in Ecclesiastes 12.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Praise. What are your thoughts?
You know, one thing that I've noticed with specifically Adam, I don't know about any other soul sleeper, is they like to allegorize these texts, and it's just real simple. God, in Zechariah 12:1, it says that He created the spirit within man, and that spirit that was created by God, that part that is like God, because He's a spirit, we are also spiritual, or have some type of substance like that. It returns to God who created it. It makes so much sense. We don't have to allegorize all this stuff. So hopefully, just let's take it for what it actually says and be simple-minded. It simply says what it says. I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you, Praise. Adam, floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, today the problem is that allegorizing is just seen as this extremely negative. It's like, oh, well, you're just trying to twist or manipulate the text. But to me, the problem is, if you want to take them all literally, you simply have to face contradictions. And so I don't know, if you just want to say it's like, well, I just believe that the Bible is contradictory in a variety of ways, well, then that's its own problem. But so like Ecclesiastes 9 says, right, the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing. They have no further reward, and even their name is forgotten. So what are we to say? Are we to say that the living or the dead are in heaven praising God, or that they're having interactions? Or do we say that they know nothing and they do nothing? And there's a bunch of other verses in the Old Testament that all say what? How can I praise you, O Lord, if I am dead? Right? That's what David is constantly saying, right? What glory, what praise can I give you if I'm dead? So to me, these are very much in conflict. If you want to just read them literally and say there could be no allegorizing, okay, fine. Then you simply live with a slew of contradictions.
Thank you, Adam. Okay, now for you, Praise, the curious Kairos. Question for Praise. How do you harmonize Jesus telling his disciples that they won't join him in the place he is preparing for them until he comes back?
I need a reference here, because I have no idea.
John 14.
Oh, you mean
John 14?
I prepare you a mansion. Yeah, is that what he's? Okay, so John 14. Yeah, that there's going to be a place where, eschatologically speaking, that where all believers are going to be together and joined together in harmony and unity. And whatever how you define the word mansion there, it's like I think it means also like a spiritual dwelling place or something. Yes, that's going to be a wonderful reality, but that doesn't take away the intermediate state, though. This is talking about something in the future. So yeah, Jesus can speak about things in the future, but that doesn't mean like everything else is eliminated before that. I think that's illogical reasoning. So yeah, I'll leave it there.
Thank you.
I think that one of the primary points here is that, okay, so the apostles will not join Jesus until he returns. Okay, so then doesn't that eliminate the whole thief on the cross notion? Will Christ be with the dead or not? And this is one of the problems that we had, is that, to me, yes, you have a very strange view of heaven, I guess. And so I didn't know that was going to be as much of a debated topic tonight. But if Jesus won't see the apostles, right, till he comes back, like, how are we to parse these out? How are these supposed to work out?
Thank you, Adam. Yeah, Praise, you get the last word. Go ahead.
Well, again, it's not talking. So this isn't talking about the state of the dead in John 14. It's a whole different context. Like you can't mix topics and categories together and confuse, and it gets complicated. It gets too confusing. So no, he's just talking about a place for the church. They see these were the pillars of the church, and there was going to be an eschatological end, or there's going to be a place where everything is going to be united with the church. So I don't know why we're talking about the state of the dead here. It's just talking about an eschatological thing to look forward to for believers. So what does that have to do with the state of the dead?
Thank you, Praise. Adam, pseudonym, $5 super chat. Appreciate the support there. Pseudonym, I need clarification. Where do believers go if not heaven? If that is your affirmative, does heaven have no believers and only the Trinity exists there?
Well, they left out the angels. The angels are in heaven too. But yes, the believers go to Sheol. And I don't think that Sheol is part of heaven. That's the primary distinction between Tom and I, is that I would say that believers go to Sheol. And so in that part, we agree. I think in some ways the real debate was, is heaven in Sheol? Which Tom seems to think it is. And I don't think that that is taught or expressed or was even thought of in the Old Testament. And so therefore, yeah, I don't think that that is where believers go. Believers do not go to heaven. Rather, they go to Sheol. And those who are in heaven are Jesus and the Father, the Trinity, and the angels.
Thank you, Adam. Praise, over to you.
Yeah, that seems really confusing. If it's not in heaven, where else would it be? Heaven would have to encompass everything in a spiritual reality. If they're in a spiritual reality, it's heaven, because there's nothing distinct from Yahweh himself. Everything exists spiritually within that realm. It even says in Ephesians 6 that there's wicked, it says that there's principalities, powers in high places. That means heaven. So there exists, everything that's spiritual exists in the third heaven. And I think he's not harmonizing that well, Adam, at all. And I think that's probably the failure of tonight's debate for him. But anyway, go ahead.
See, I find this problem, what's Tom is proposing, to be extremely problematic. Like, all that is spiritual is heaven. What does it mean that Satan is kicked out of heaven? Is it possible for him to be kicked out of heaven? So I'm not exactly sure what he means. Is he saying that, okay, hell is also the place where God's presence resides, and all of these notions? So to me, I guess we would have to have much further discussions, because what he's saying doesn't make any sense to me either, because it sounds like he's proposing is like, well, simple. You know who else is with God? All of the wicked. God dwells with the righteous and the wicked in the same way. I'm not really sure what it is that he's proposing then, if he's saying that all of the spiritual realm is where God's presence is and where God dwells, because it seems clear to me that the wicked suffer from the absence of God's presence and not the righteous.
Thank you, Adam. Okay, that was a question for you, so let's move on here. This is more of a comment, but I think it's directed at you, Praise. Gavin Lockard, appreciate the support, $5. Death is an enemy, 1 Corinthians 15:26. But if the soul is immortal and believers go immediately to heaven, then death is actually a good thing. Praise, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, so the word death is not univocal. It is there's layers to it. It's multi-layered. So it's called polysemous. So the word, and in fact, you can see in Hebrews 2, Satan is called death. So I think death has different meanings. It doesn't always just mean one. It doesn't mean one specific thing. So death is an enemy. I would say Satan, it epitomizes, or he's the essence of death. And I would even say that the law is death. It even says in Romans 7, he says the law is death. So it depends what you mean by death, as some type of physical coil, like changing out of this physical coil or something. I don't know if it means that, but even within 1 Corinthians 15, it makes it pretty clear that Satan himself is death. So, and also Revelation 6:8, it says that death rides on the horse, and the horse, the white horse, I think it is, or something, and he comes with some type of falsity. But yeah, I'll leave it there.
Go ahead, Adam.
So death being an enemy, I'm not really sure that this touches this subject nearly as much as perhaps other subjects. One, I think that this is largely referring to the second death. That's what Paul has in mind here in 1 Corinthians, because he is contrasting eternal life with death. And so it seems to me like he's contrasting the eternal death of damnation and contrasting eternal life. But in 1 Corinthians 15, what I also think that he is referring to is the resurrection. He's referring to the resurrection. He's not referring to souls going to heaven. Paul is not focused on an intermediate state. He's not encouraging the believers with intermediate state. What is Paul's big proclamation? For if Christ is not raised, right? Our religion is in vain. Our beliefs are in vain. That's the major point. Jesus Christ was resurrected from the dead so that we will be resurrected unto eternal life. Not Jesus Christ ascended into heaven as a spirit. So therefore we can look forward to being spirits in heaven. I think that actually this idea that we become spirits and go to heaven and celebrate and live with God is a doctrine that takes away from the resurrection that was taught in the New Testament and the Old Testament.
Thank you, Adam. Praise, you get the last word. Go ahead.
It's just I seen a comment, and they made fun of me with the horse. Well, literally, the pale horse means green horse. So, like, I don't know why they were laughing at that, but I wouldn't disagree that 1 Corinthians 15 is focusing on the resurrection, but that has nothing to do with the intermediate state. I don't know why it's either the resurrection or nothing. And I think that is a gross error on the soul sleeper side.
Thank you, Praise. And okay, you got the last word. So let's move on to the next one. It's for you. Adam comes in from Barry. How was the witch able to interact with Saul if he was asleep? Did the witch wake him? Note, God said it was indeed Saul. Go on.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, shout out Barry, but it's Samuel. I think you're referring to. The witch would have had to have woken Saul if she wanted to talk to Saul because Saul was there. Yeah. So in this case, that's the thing is like, let's imagine soul sleeper true for 2 seconds. Big deal. God goes, wakes Samuel up, and Samuel speaks to Saul. Like, I don't see this story about Samuel being woken up and it literally being Samuel to be a problem. Because if the heaven view is true, it's like, okay, cool. Well, then why did God pull Samuel out of heaven to come down and speak to the witch? I actually almost more considered that to be a more problematic view. It sounds stranger for me that the witch could summon or Samuel would come out to meet and talk with Saul. But necromancy has been something that's been talked about all throughout the Old Testament. And so that gets into a bunch of other discussions. But in short, I just don't see this as a problem if one believed in soul sleep.
Thank you, Adam. Praise, go ahead.
It just seems like Adam's position is unfalsifiable. How could we ever falsify something? Because it's in the afterlife, but it's really not where God is. Well, where is God not? Doesn't he fill heavens and the earth? Why would there be somewhere where God doesn't fill? So these people, like, so he conjured up this, some prophet out, the prophet Samuel. But he was sleeping, though. He was sleeping in another realm where God isn't. That makes no sense, folks. Spirits do not go to sleep. Spirits are not unconscious. Spirits are alive consciously forever. We even see this in Revelation 20, that they're tormented day and night because their mind does not go to sleep. And that's the thing. To me, it's just so unfalsifiable. Well, I'll end it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Praise. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah. So one, he's asserting that, spirits don't go to sleep. I just don't see any evidence of that. I would love to see an evidence or argument that this is the case. It does seem evident to me that when we sleep, that our spirits sleep too. I'm not always conscious during my sleeping. Do I have dreams on occasion? Then it seems like, sure, my mind or spirit is awake during that period. Yes. Is that all of the time? No. It seems to me if spirits are just forever awake under all circumstances, then therefore you should have a conscious, awake experience every single time your body sleeps. That seems to me to be the standard. And then the notion of talking about, well, God is everywhere. Okay, so I think that this actually completely eliminates any meaningful speech in the Bible. When God says his presence filled the temple, well, how did it fill the temple? It was already there. That's pointless and meaningless. So I actually think there are more problems than saying like, well, you can't run away from God. God is everywhere. The rest of these talking in the Bible are utterly meaningless, therefore, on this view. And yes, it does seem to me that there are places, that in a sense, God is not. And for most people, they would say that is for the wicked. The wicked do not get to enjoy the presence of God. And that's what I would say and hold to. Right? The wicked do not sit in the glorious presence of God. They are apart from God forever and ever.
Thank you, Adam, for the final word. Okay, Pseudonym's got another one, and this time he's coming at you. Praise I am. So get ready for Pseudonym's question here. $10 super chat. Thank you very much for the support. Praise, can you reconcile your position? Abraham's bosom or purgatory, if saying heaven is in the center of the earth with no locality, are Abraham's bosom and purgatory side by side? Who passes the pearly gates? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh wow, this is an interesting one. No, I'm not pushing for the idea of purgatory, that people are getting purged of their wickedness and eventually they go to heaven. I'm saying that those in the afterlife that go to the other side of Abraham's, and maybe this is where I might be an error too. Maybe Abraham's bosom encompasses both the rich man's side and then the rich man and Lazarus. So maybe that was my error. I haven't thought about that. Maybe it's both, but I am for sure not saying anything like a purgatory, because it's a waiting place. It's a confinement for judgment. They're awaiting judgment there. And the ones that are, on the other side, in Abraham's side, are awaiting bliss and glory. And when Jesus returns back to the earth, they're gonna follow him. They're coming with him. So they're going to accompany him side by side. I don't know what that means. I mean, how could you put a direction where God is a spiritual realm? It's there. I don't know the exact, if it's up or down, north, east, south, or west, in a natural view. I don't know what that means in a realm where God is. I think that this is the issue, because maybe that's what we're talking past each other, is what the heck does heaven even mean in the first place? I think that would be a better discussion, maybe.
Here's my clarifying question I'll insert. Praise for you. What was Abraham's bosom called before Abraham died and went there?
Sheol, right?
So it was renamed to Abraham's bosom when he got there?
No, that's was described by Luke, right? I'm not sure getting your question.
Was it always called Abraham's bosom?
Well, it seems to be that in the Jewish literature, in the Talmud, they have that's an actual a reality. Yeah.
Even before Abraham went there.
I guess so. Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say it's all the way back to the Abraham's days. Yeah. I think maybe in Abraham's days they probably called it that. I'm not sure, but the Jews did hold to that.
What about before Abraham's day, like with Adam, Eve, the pre-flood saints? Did they go to a place called Abraham's bosom?
Probably not.
Okay. Okay. Adam,
They went to Disneyland, Donnie.
Yeah. Why didn't they take me with them? That would have been fun.
Yeah. Okay. So this is another part where I think that there's a serious inconsistency with Tom's position, because Tom has asserted that there is some sort of judgment for the dead. But then he also asserts that this judgment seems to be revoked or something, because Christ post-mortem comes and evangelizes them. So therefore, no judgment or proclamation made by God seems to stand, but instead it's overruled by new information. So I guess I would be further curious. Do other people have postpartum chances at salvation? If non-believers and atheists and Richard Dawkins and Daniel Dennett and Sam Harris, and pick your favorite atheists that you wish would get saved, do they have the opportunity to get saved by Jesus and hear the gospel again? Because to me, it seems like God's judgments post-mortem are final. There is no revoking. It is appointed unto man once to die, and then comes the judgment. And when God proceeds to declare you into eternal life and you into eternal damnation, there is no further opportunity. There is no chance. And therefore, we should be very careful and diligent with the lives that we lead now.
Thank you, Adam. Praise. You get the last word. Go ahead.
And not to be confrontational with Anna, but it's a straw man. Nowhere did I ever imply someone gets two chances. The people that lived before Jesus never even had a chance to be saved. Remember, everyone gets an. God is not a respecter of person. So all the people that died before Jesus came to the earth never heard the gospel. How are they going to get saved? So that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying second chances anywhere. If Dawkins, if he dies in his unbelief, he's going to the lake of fire. And if it happens before Jesus's return, he's going to where the rich man is, the other side of the gulf of where Abraham was and Lazarus. It's just that simple. It's a straw man. Thank you.
Donnie, forgive me. Can we stick on that for a minute? Because that is a really interesting and new bit of information, in my opinion, to this debate. Is that all right?
Sure. Let's do this. Let's have you respond, Adam, and then we'll give praise.
No worries.
Response.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. So are you therefore saying that Abraham wasn't saved, Adam, Cain, Abel, nobody was saved prior to Christ?
No, I'm saying it's always been justification through faith, that Abraham and the ones who believed in God were counted as righteousness, and they would go to the good side of Sheol. But the ones who didn't, the ones who were under you'd say that didn't believe or not justified by faith, were still on the other side. It's always been that way. There's always been a distinction or dividing line between both sides. So yes, it's always been justification by faith.
But those who have never heard will get to hear in the afterlife.
Those who never heard the gospel before Jesus got to hear him preaching. Jesus was preaching to. Jesus doesn't preach to angels, by the way, because angels are not savable. He only preaches the people, the human beings that come through the womb, or came through the womb of John 3, that came through the waters of women. You have to be born through the waters of women to even have a chance of salvation. So those who didn't get to hear the the chance of being saved the gospel, Jesus preached to those people, but everyone else was saved that believed in Jesus because, that believed in Yahweh, but they knew Jesus was coming anyway. They just didn't know who it was and when. So it's not like something that's just sprung upon them, this Jesus thing, because I do believe all the way back in Genesis 3 that it was the pre-gospel there. It's called the proto-evangelium. And it says that he'll strike his feet, or the serpent will strike his feet and he'll bruise his head. So hopefully that explains it.
Thank you, gentlemen, for the back and forth on that. Definitely an important subject matter. We'll wrap it up with this. Looks like Pseudonym has a follow-up to his last question. Appreciate the support there, Pseudonym. Much appreciated. He says, Praise, you said there are no second chances. Why did Jesus pray in Hades, or what you call the third heaven? What was the point of Jesus preaching in heaven?
To save sinners that didn't have a chance before he came. They were sinners. They were in Sheol, the condemned side, but they didn't have the gospel preached to them. We're all sinners. They're no worse a sinner or no less a sinner than us today, but they do deserve to be preached to, have a chance of eternal life.
Adam?
Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure. I mean, there was one further part to this, then maybe Tom will respond a little further. But therefore, today, are people that have never heard the gospel still preached to by Jesus? And if Tom says no, because the gospel has gone out into the world, I really don't see how this is any different from the Old Testament. The whole point was Abraham. Who preached him the gospel? How does he have saving faith? Because God is connected with people on the earth. He doesn't have to have anyone just going around only preaching the gospel, but every man is accountable to the general revelation that we have, the conscience in our hearts, the revelation of creation, all of these sorts of notions. And so I don't believe in any sort of postpartum gospel preaching, because they are just as accountable as everybody is today. There is no nuance or difference or distinction between those who had the opportunity in the past and those who have the opportunity today. Everybody could have gotten saved, just like Abraham, or pick your favorite patriarch back in the old days, as people have the opportunity to get saved today. So I don't see any major distinction.
Okay. Thank you very much, Adam. Praise, you get the last word. It was for you.
Yeah, so the Jews knew that there's a future Messiah coming. They didn't know the full details, but they knew elements of the gospel that were already established in Genesis 3, as I mentioned. And Romans 2 says those who do not get if they're in some exotic land outside where no one can get a hold of them, they're going to be judged on their conscience. And if that applies, it might apply to the Old Testament, but why is Jesus preaching to these people? He doesn't preach to angels. Angels are not salvageable. Jesus didn't come to save angels. He's preaching to give a chance to those who never heard the gospel. And maybe that could be a picture too. Maybe there will be some mercy in the millennium. Who knows? I think there's too many assumptions being made by Adam and his viewpoint.
All right, gentlemen, that wraps up our Q&A. That was almost 35 minutes of questions. Felt like I blinked and it's over. I mean, this is a fun topic. It's an engaging topic, very interesting topic, but we'll wrap it up here, as we have now just hit the 3-hour mark. So apologies to those whose question we may not have gotten to, but hopefully we can do another debate on this in the future, maybe even an open mic panel discussion, something like that. So, okay, Adam, praise I am. I appreciate the debate, the comprehensive debate, the work you both put into prepping for the debate to give us one to really think about on this issue. So guys, if we can, let's have some final words and final thoughts. Adam and Praise. Adam, let's start with you. Again, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for engaging in this debate on this topic. Let's hand it to you for some final words, final thoughts.
Thanks again, Donnie, for another great debate. And thanks, Tom, for the debate. I don't have too many people lined up to debate this issue. So if you're out there and you want to debate me, feel free to shoot Donnie a message or shoot me a message. You can find my info one of those ways. And look forward to many future debates. But overall, this is one where if you are a Protestant, I do not feel like this is as majorly consequential. But one of the reasons that I feel like this discussion has been squelched and pushed out is because of Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy. You see, it does run entirely contrary to their doctrines. But if you're a Protestant, it's much less immaterial. Rather you go to heaven or Sheol. Of course, I have come to defend tonight's position of Sheol. And I do think it is the biblical position. Believers go to Sheol when you die, and we await the resurrection of the saints with Christ's return and the final judgment. So thanks, guys, for the debate, and look forward to the next one.
Thank you, Adam. I look forward to the next one as well. Again, last week, you had two, including this epic showdown, which continues to receive a lot of positive feedback, and you'll be back very shortly for a somewhat related topic. And I'm excited for this one: annihilationism versus eternal conscious torment. Curious Christianity, Turretin fan, both seasoned, because Adam, you're basically seasoned by this point. So
I'm covered for you, Turretin. Covered for you, buddy.
Yeah, you're going to bring the heat to Turret. You're going to give him nightmares now leading up to the debate. So a shout out to T-Fan. If he ever sees
I'm going to try and torment him, but it'll only be temporary.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The tormenting will end. It'll cease.
Yeah.
So Praise, thank you as well for doing this. Lots of fun. Appreciate your time leading up to the debate, the prep, the work, and also the debate itself. So let's hand it to you for some final words, final thoughts.
Oh, man, it's a privilege to debate on this channel. It's by far the best debating channel out there. You're the best moderator. Adam was a good interlocutor. He had some different points that I had to engage. I appreciate his points. I'm going to look more into his position. But traditional soul sleep is not what Adam professes. It's much different. It's physicalism and different ideas. But I'd like to engage with different topics and ideas. And thank you so much, SFT. I look forward to other maybe debates like this in the future. These are fun. I really enjoyed it, and God bless you all.
God bless. Adam, Praise, again, thank you for the debate and those final words. We're going to let you gentlemen out for the night. Adam, Praise, we'll talk to the both of you soon. Adam, Praise. Okay, well, I hope everybody enjoyed that discussion, that debate as much as I did. It definitely generates a lot of opinions, a diversity of opinions, and that's good because it creates a stimulating discussion. And so hopefully we can do more on this issue in the future. And so what I do want to do, though, is give a shout out to firstly, some of the love and support that came in, not necessarily questions or anything like that, but just some comments showing some support. Stephen Black, $20 super chat. I appreciate it. Says, I'm still reading your book, End Times Revealed. Great read. Well, praise the Lord. I got that one behind me, actually, End Times Revealed. So appreciate the support. And if you had any questions or anything like that on it, feel free to reach out. Mac the Human, $5 super chat, says, just throwing a tip to our host. No big deal. Well, I appreciate that, guys. This is a listener supported ministry. And so I do want to thank everybody for the love, for the support, for the feedback. I really do appreciate that. Looks like there's a lot of positive feedback for tonight's debate as well. So allow me to go over some reminders and announcements. We are again into another epic week of events. We're ending this year with a bang. We've been doing our best to give you roughly 5 live events a week with a mix of interviews, debates, discussions, open mics. We've been doing a lot of open mics as well, and video premieres. So we still got a few for you over the next week. We've got a Deity of Christ debate coming up between Ditmar Hoxha and Stacy Turbeville. That'll be in 2 days. We have a major James 2 event right here, a comprehensive examination of James 2. I'll be here with Pastor Jason Robinson. I think this one's on Thursday. So we're going to discuss the topic for about an hour. Then we're going to open up the chat for hopefully an edifying, a fruitful discussion. Those that agree, those that disagree, as in they have a different take on James 2. It is a controversial and hotly debated passage. Then we want to see you there, whether it's just a question or a challenge in the live chat, or you directly want to join for impromptu discussion, then feel free to do so. I think it's going to be fun. Then I think this one's Saturday night, either Friday or Saturday. We got Dr. Sam Frost, professing preterist. This will be a debate on the question, has all Bible prophecy been fulfilled? Both these gentlemen have debated eschatology many times before, and so I'm sure this will be another comprehensive debate, this time though on eschatology and full preterism, to be specific. Of course, I gave this a shout out earlier. Adam and Turretin fan, The Nature of Hell. Praise will be back debating an atheist, Grayson Hawk, God versus non-God worldview. And so that should be fun. We just booked several more to wrap up this epic year in December. So this is the Great Age of the Earth debate. Two powerhouses here. I'm excited for this. T-Rock and Planet Peterson. They'll be debating whether or not the Earth is young or ancient. You're not going to want to miss out on this one. We've got this one coming up at the beginning of December. Austin Sims and Ken Hovind. Is there reasonable scientific evidence for evolution? That'll be December 2nd. Creationists assemble for the end of the year. This will be December 27th. I'm excited for this. This will be a live, lengthy, we plan on going for a few hours to engage our awesome audience, end the year right, 2024, all things creation event. So Matt Naylor, one of my ministry partners here, and Matt Powell will be here to engage the audience, take your questions. We got some videos we'll respond to, put up some memes, just have a fun night of discussion on all things creation. Who knows? Maybe we'll open up the mic as well. I don't know. We'll play it by ear. Should be fun though. This one to kick off the year, I'm excited for this one. Major debate on creation evolution. Two PhDs here, Dr. Jerry Bergman, Dr. Chris Thompson. Common descent or common design? And so again, we'll be kicking off the year with this debate. This one's coming up in December as well. I'm excited for this one. I'm thrilled, and it's a privilege to be hosting both of these experienced, knowledgeable debaters. We've got Dr. Fuzz Rana and Dr. Robertson Jenis. I'm just looking at the live chat as well here. And we've got, let's see, our good old friend here, Keeping Up, says, in fact, the word Trinity never occurs in the Bible. Well, the word atheist doesn't occur in the Bible either, but the concept's there. The fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. And so you guys are going to have to do a lot better than that. Probably not the time and place to engage this a little bit, but I do find it funny and somewhat entertaining that we've literally put out a dozen hours worth of content upholding the Trinity, proving it from Scripture, and debunking the anti-Trinitarian positions like oneness monarchianism, modalism, Unitarianism, Sabellianism, you name it. And there's been no serious rebuttal or criticism presented, just the repeating of talking points. So Keeping Up, here we go. Let's see you engage this. This is the Old Testament too. I mean, we can easily prove it from the New Testament, but here you go. The Trinity right in the Old Testament. Come ye near unto me, hear ye this. I have not spoken in secret from the beginning, from the time that it was. There am I, and now the Lord God, there's the Father, and his Spirit, there's the Holy Spirit, hath sent me. There's your Trinity, keeping up. Let's see you refute that. All three persons right in the Old Testament in one verse. Thus saith the Lord, thy Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. I am the Lord God, thy God, which teacheth thee to profit, which leadeth thee by the way that thou shouldest go. So there you go. There's one point that we've discussed in our dozen of hours worth of discussion on this topic, and it hasn't been engaged. And so I find it funny. Keeping Up says that's because Jesus is Holy Spirit in flesh. Well, Jesus said he's going to send the comforter, another of the same kind. Okay. A distinct, different person. So yeah, it's a systematic that needs to be engaged. Genesis 1 is clear, and Keeping Up, you dodged hard that point. Let us, there's the plural. Notice this. God told us about himself in the first sentence of the Bible. He is one being with a plurality of persons. That's why you see all throughout the Old Testament, God being spoken of in the plural and the singular, because that's what a Trinitarian would expect. He's one being, three persons. But the anti-Trinitarians can't explain the plural verses. Okay. And so Genesis 1:26 says, then God said, let us, there's plural, make man in our image according to our likeness. There's your Trinity right there. And then Keeping Up and your other anti-Trinitarians. Oh, this is the angels. This is the divine council. No, angels don't create. And we're not made in the image of angels. We're made in the image of God. Okay. And further evidence for this is what? In the next verse, it says, so God created man in his. Now we have the singular. So God says, let us make man in our image. And then in the next verse, it says, so God created man in his image, the singular, because God is one being comprising three persons. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. So anti-Trinitarianism demolished. But this is just announcements and reminders. So I'm going to save more comments on that issue for the future. But the point is, okay, for people like Keeping Up, you need to engage. Okay, Nephilim free as well. Engage the points. Don't just repeat already debunked talking points. You guys comment on our in-depth comprehensive videos on this topic, but you don't even address any of the points made. It makes it look like you're not watching the videos. And so it is not very scholarly. You're not being a good student. It's very unsophisticated. It's sloppy. It only showcases the power of the Trinitarian position scripturally, if the positions aren't being engaged. I literally just showed you why it's not the angels, because we're not made in the image of angels. Angels don't create. Okay. And the next passage says, and God made man in his image, singular. Okay. He was the one creating. But in Genesis 1:26, he says, let us make man in our image, us in our likeness. So the plural and the singular also, Keeping Up did not engage Isaiah 48:16-17, where you have the Father, the Holy Spirit, and the Son all in the same verse. Okay. When it comes to persons, again, this is a systematic. This is comes down to the traits and characteristics of what makes up a person. A person can love, a person can think, a person has a will. Okay. A person can speak. And that's what we find is the Son speaks, he loves, he has a will. The Father speaks, he loves, he has a will. Okay. That goes to a comment here where somebody said, oh, right here, Jason Pete still does not say three persons. Again, the Bible also doesn't say atheist, but the concept's there. Okay, so the Son, the Father, and the Holy Spirit all can love. They have a will, they can think, they can speak, they have their own experiences. Those are traits that make up a person. So they are their own person. Okay, 3 persons, 1 God. But we're going to do an entire comments on this topic soon. And so hopefully, Travis Weems says unsophisticated slop. Yes, it does. If you're not actually engaging the points, if you're not actually engaging and interacting with the arguments. Okay. Somebody like Keeping Up was literally repeating the same talking points, even though I commented to him and said, by the way, the angel's interpretation doesn't work. This is why. And then his follow-up comment was, this is clearly talking about the angels, an assertion without actually demonstrating it, clearly ignoring the majority of my comments. So therefore, yes, that is an unsophisticated approach to debate and engagement on a specific topic. And so here's the Trinity right here, militant wings. Go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. 3 persons right there. So yeah, hopefully we'll get some actual rebuttals to the points we made rather than just repeating assertions. Okay. So anyways, I think we're going to wrap it up there. That was just a sneak preview in terms of upcoming programs, upcoming live shows. We got a solid mix for you in terms of interviews, debates, discussions, open mics, and I'm working on many of the, again, so here's an example, not 3 persons. No, this is why the Trinitarian position is looking so strong in the comment sections of the recent videos that we've put out, because all we get is very unsophisticated comments like this, just making assertions, but not actually engaging and interacting. We've already demonstrated that by definition, okay, what makes up a person is having what? The ability to love, to think, to speak. Okay, persons have wills, persons have experiences. And that's what we see with the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit is they all have a will, they love, they speak. That one divine will is distributed between the 3 persons, okay? And they can love, they can speak, they have their own unique experiences. So by definition, that has to be person. And if you don't, then you fall into, if you don't use the word person, I like to say pick another word. But the thing is, they don't go pick another word. And because of that, or another truth to explain that reality, then they fall into monarchianism or oneness or modalism or versions of it. So that's the problem. But notice how Keeping Up here hasn't actually responded to my point on Genesis 1:26 and 1:27. Let us make man in our image, in our likeness. And then Genesis 1:27, let man is made in his image. So plural and singular. That's why it can't be the angels. It can't be the angels because, again, angels don't create. We're not made in the image of angels. Angels are also not mentioned. So it's just a horrible argument and abuse of the text. So Keeping Up, pretty epic fail, my good man. Anyways, I'm going to wrap it up on the Trinity there because we are going to, it's tempting to continue to respond, but we are going to do some comments on comments and open mics coming up on the issue. Now, I'm excited for this because at the end of December, we're going to have 2 nights, 2 epic Q&As here, 2 hours each. So it'll be roughly 4 hours of audience questions and host questions, as I'll have some of my own questions. So we're going to be having 2 days, Dr. Jerry Bergman, Why Evolution is False. And then we are also going to have Dr. Grady McMurtry, Evolution is False, Creation is True. And we want to make sure that this is a thorough, an edifying, fruitful couple days for the audience to give them that opportunity to ask their questions, present their challenges, and have an all-encompassing show on the topic of creation versus evolution. All right, guys, stay tuned. This was Monday. This was our first show for this week. We might do something impromptu tomorrow night, being Tuesday night. But again, we will be back here Wednesday. We'll be back here Thursday. We got a big debate over the weekend as well. So lots to look forward to this week, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate the feedback. I appreciate the comments, the support, the love. And again, I hope everybody had as much fun as I did for this debate on Soul Sleep between Adam and Praise. I think they did a good job at giving us a thought-provoking exchange on a controversial topic. God bless all. Standing for Truth is out.